Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and against my counselor's better judgment, I'm going to face my trauma head on. And also, I really like playing video games, really like talking about video games. So what better way to do it than review video games on YouTube for me and for you guys. And also, the girls have kind of got tired of me moping around the house and told me to get out and do something. And reviewing games is kind of all I know how to do. So guys, of course, it's a new year, and that means new horizons. And there's not going to be some majestic, godly horse telling me what games to review. There's not going to be some place Satan trying to kill me and take over my channel, which, by the way, why didn't he just start his own channel? I don't think he ever thought that through. And lastly, there's not going to be some psychopath in a horse mask torturing me and forcing me to play games that I don't really want to play. So today we're going to be taking a look at a game I've been dying to review for years now. And that's Robocop for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
There's not really much on the tids and bits for Robocop on the NES. It's a beat-em-up / run-and-gun hybrid. It was developed and published by Data East in 1988, and of course is based on the Robocop film from 1987. Of course, Robocop was sub-licensed to Data East by Ocean Software, who had obtained the rights to create the game from Orion Pictures. Now, Ocean Software and Data East had a close working relationship according to the interview I read. Ocean Software let Data East create the arcade game, and Ocean Software in turn actually based their home versions off of Data East's arcade version. One last little interesting tidbit is when Ocean Software was acquiring the license to make the game, they weren't sure if this movie was going to be a blockbuster success or not, and they got the rights to make it for a mere $20,000. But luckily for Ocean Software and even Data East, by the time the games came out, the movie had already been a hit and the VHS was around the corner. And that's it for the tidbits, so let's hit the streets of Detroit with Robocop.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
There's quite a bit I want to say on the gameplay. The main thing is that I really like the beat-em-up / run-and-gun aspects to the game, and I really like how it mixes things up, because in one part of the stage, you're doing kind of more of a beat-em-up style, and then usually about a quarter to halfway through the stage, Robocop will grab his gun out, and then it becomes a run-and-gun section. And then once you get to the end of the level, it might switch back or switch again. It keeps switching back and forth, and it really changes up the gameplay, so it doesn't really feel grindy in a lot of parts with the gameplay. With that being said, how I like everything gets switched up, honestly, it's very basic. Robocop, the controls move he's very stiff in his movement, and his attacks are very basic. Like I said, the beat-em-up aspect is just a punch. All you're doing is just doing one punch, it's just one button tap, and that's it. And then with the gun section, it's just you shoot with A. And the only good thing about this is you can press start, and you can change your weapons. You have your basic gun, which has infinite ammo. You have a machine gun, which is short range but rapid fire. And then you have the Cobra, I guess, sniper rifle or the Cobra rifle or whatnot, and it's pretty much a one-hit kills weapon when it comes to normal enemies. When it comes to bosses, not so much one-hit kills. But most of the game you're going to run through, you're going to use the pistol. I've used the weapon for maybe a sub-boss. I've used the weapon on the bosses, the Cobra weapon and the submachine gun, but most of the game, your pistol does you just fine. One last thing about the gameplay mechanics, something I discovered late was if you hold select down, you block. The problem with this is, it really didn't, I was able to successfully block moves, but it's very clunky moving over, and you block a move, and then you go to attack, but then there's a delay there, so I would end up getting hit again and lose health anyway. So honestly, the block feature doesn't work that well. Now, the one thing I really don't like is the fact that in this game they time you. Now, I get it, this is Data East porting over their arcade game to the NES, so they're wanting to bring in all the aspects, like the time and, of course, the health. But with an arcade, I understand why there's a time limit. With the home console version, I really didn't like that. But Data East does have power-up drops and time drops, meaning things that fill up your health and things that will fill up your time, but I really don't feel they give you a whole lot of chances to fill up your time. They give you enough health drops throughout the game. They don't give you enough time drops, I felt. The level design is honestly very basic. You start on the left side of the screen and you gotta move towards the right, defeating your enemies, with the occasional ascending and descending vertical, meaning going upstairs, downstairs, and all of that, but ultimately the goal is to keep moving to the right of the screen until you get to the end of the level to defeat the boss. You'll spend the majority of the game in 3 types of locations. You'll either be in the streets of Detroit, and it can either be night or day. Another major location you'll keep revisiting is either inside a factory or outside a factory. Despite the Streets of Detroit and factory levels, there are 2 other levels that are in the game. City Hall, where you save the mayor, and then finally you'll spend some time in the tower of the big bad corporation of the film, OCP. And that level in particular is the 3rd and last level, and it repeats itself really from the 3rd level, except it's a lot harder, and of course you start outside the tower and fight your way into it, and then it's pretty much the same exact level as the 3rd level, except the bad guys are more numerous and harder to beat. Now there are 2 mini levels within the game where you do target practice to help up your high score. So I guess at the end of the game you could take the top mark, the highest score in the game. But honestly, it's boring. It doesn't work really well. It feels like something that would be in an arcade or a Zapper game. But instead you're using the D-pad, so it doesn't work really well, and it wasn't really fun for me. And I'm not really a high score type of person, but if you're into that, they have that here for you in the game. Now another aspect of the game, of course, is the boss battles, and they are very, very basic. Like the first one is just this big henchman, and you just have to punch the crap out of him. The second level is a guy who's kidnapped the mayor, and you have to save the mayor, and he's pretty tricky. You kind of have to duck, let him shoot at you, and then when he does that, that gives you a shot at him, so you can stand up right away and, shoot him. Eventually you do it enough, the mayor escapes, and then you can punch the crap out of that guy to defeat him. The third boss is Red from that 70s show.
How you doing? Bitches leave.
Gee, Poppy.
And I just want to say, when my time comes, I want to be buried face down, so that anyone who doesn't like me can kiss my ass.
And he just essentially throws grenades at you, and he has henchmen coming up behind you. You shoot him enough, and he escapes, and then he has these 3 little guys who are like ninja kind of things, and they attack you. The fourth boss, of course, is Ed. I think it's 109 or 309. It's the big robot from the first movie that we all recognize. He's, pretty tough. It takes a while to defeat him, but it's not hard. His moves are very basic. You can figure out his pattern and defeat him fairly quickly. He escapes and runs away. And from there, the next boss battle is you fighting Red, again from that 70s show. Now, this one was really hard. I died quite a bit. But then I figured, I don't know if it's a glitch or if it's intentional, but there's this crane that keeps dropping steel beams on you. But I found out on the left side of the screen, if you shoot it, it stops and it just stays still. And then you can just keep shooting at Red until eventually you defeat him. And the final boss is you fighting Ed again. It's the same boss battle. I think he might be, his health might be a little bit more buffed up, but besides that, it's the same boss battle. The challenge here is just, the level is so tough to get through, by the time you get to the end, you have little to no time to defeat Ed, or you have really low health, and that, I guess, lies the challenge, but besides that, it's the same attacks, and he's fairly easy to beat. So as far as the boss battles go, I like the big battle with Ed is nice, but honestly, all the bosses are very basic. Looking back, the boss battles aren't that memorable, and especially in the NES era, you have to have very memorable boss battles. That's what the NES era was known for, and Robocop, sadly, comes up short on that. So I guess I'll finish this off by saying that I think Robocop's gameplay is serviceable. It has decent mechanics. It has a decent array of bad guys to fight. You run into a handful of type of bad guys in each level, and they switch it up in some of the levels, and then in other levels I felt like they were just kind of repeating themselves. Same thing with the boss battles. They're serviceable, but they're nothing big or special. The level design is very basic. So, all in all, I would give Robocop's gameplay 2 bits.
I'd buy that for $1.
Out of 4.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
This here is going to be a very short section, because Robocop's sound is very minimalistic, let's just say. So essentially, you have like your punch sound and your gun sound, and I think there might be a handful of other sound effects in the game. As far as the music for Robocop goes, it's one song. Actually, I take that back. There's a handful of songs. Most of them are really just short melodies, but essentially you have the title screen melody, which plays if you just leave the game sitting at the title screen. It'll go into this little intro and play a melody. And then you have your basic level clear melody, game over melody. You have a boss battle theme, of course, for the boss battles, a theme for the shooting range minigame, a song that plays during the credits, but the next song I'm about to mention is the one that you will hear about 90% of the time in this game, and that is the level theme, the song that plays on every single level, and that is the Robocop theme. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Robocop theme, but even I was tired of it after listening to it for 2 straight hours, so I can't imagine what a non-fan or someone who doesn't really have an opinion on the song would feel about listening to this damn song for that long. Robocop's soundtrack leaves a lot to be desired compared to other great NES soundtracks, so I'm gonna have to give it 1 bit.
I'd buy that for $1.
Out of 4.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
I really like the graphics in this game. Now, it's not, like, amazing compared to some other NES titles, but I feel like they really captured the look of Robocop. It looks like him. It really feels like the world of Robocop. It's a post-industrialization / industrial decay / urban decay look to it. And I feel like they really captured that. You know, the world that you go through in this game looks really dirty and run down and dingy, and that was the movie. Now, the story of the game, I would say, loosely follows the movie's plot. The reason I say loosely is they touch upon a lot of the high points in the movie, like saving the mayor in City Hall, or chasing down Red in the narcotics factory, fighting the big robot, and in the end, of course, defeating that corporate scumbag and shooting him and killing him. Now, I would have liked to have, the first level been you playing Murphy, and then, you becoming Robocop at the end of the first level or beginning of second level, but I understand. They were making this game for kids. It was marketed to kids, so showing a brutal cop killing, probably that had to be axed. So I understand that. It follows all the important plot points of the movie, so I gotta give it high points for that. So the story, the graphics, the overall immersion into the world, I give it high marks. 3 bits.
I'd buy that for $1.
Out of 4.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
Data East's Robocop for the NES is pretty decent. I enjoyed it. Though I wouldn't say it's a game that I'm going to be picking up and playing a lot. It's the type of game that you pick up and you play for a couple of hours, have an enjoyable time, and then you set it on the shelf for a while until a year, 2 years later, you get that itch to play it again. So I think it is definitely worth picking up for the hardcore collector, and I would even say the casual collector of the NES. Robocop, I would say, is a decent movie-to-game crossover in an era where we really didn't see that a whole lot. I mean, I think of The Predator, Home Alone, to name a few, Back to the Future. I could just keep going down the list of games that are based on movies that didn't really translate well, where Robocop, I think, does a decent job. It hits the high points of the movie's story, and then also gives you some pretty, fun gameplay, albeit, a short amount of time fun, not a game that you're going to be playing for weeks on end. You can find Robocop online loose for about $6, and if you're looking for complete in box, it's going to cost you around $20. Honestly, I would lean more on looking for the loose copy, because you don't need to be spending $20 on this game. It's a fun game, but it's not $20 fun. It's $6 range is perfect for it. Going to give you, at least 1 or 2 hours, or I would even say maybe a couple of nights of fun before you put it down and move on to the next game. Anyway, guys, that's it for Robocop. It's in the books. I enjoyed playing it and reviewing it for you guys. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. And once again, Happy New Year, guys. I'll see you in the next review. As always, stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up? Your friendly neighborhood 2-Bit Jesus here, giving you yet another 2-Bit review. Now, for this review, I've been seeing a lot of news articles recently about Space Jam 2, and it having LeBron James, and of course the great Terrence Nance directing, or is it Nancy? I don't know, I'm very bad with pronunciations, please forgive me. So looking at all this news about Space Jam 2 and the fact that it's going to be directed by the same guy who did Black Panther, which is arguably my favorite movie from last year, or the fact that it's going to have LeBron James, who is arguably the best player in basketball right now, it got me thinking about the greatest of all time, Michael. No, not Michael Jackson, even though I think he's probably one of the greatest singers and dancers of all time. No, not Mike Tyson. I mean, I don't even think he's the greatest boxer of all time, and I mean, I can see where you're going with this, Michael, Mike, makes sense. No, not George Michael, even though he's probably one of the greatest singers of all time. I mean, he does have Michael in his name, but no. That's not even close. Michaels, I guess. Michaels. I mean, Shawn Michaels is arguably the greatest in-ring performer of all time, but that's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the one, the only, Michael Jordan. Arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, and starred in the greatest Looney Tunes movie of all time, Space Jam. And like any great movie from the 90s, you of course had to have a movie game tie-in. So today we're looking at Space Jam for the original PlayStation.
Whoa, I don't play defense.
Space Jam is an arcade-style sports game published by Acclaim Entertainment and developed by Sculpted Software. It was released for the PlayStation in October of 1996. It was also released on the Sega Saturn and PC. The game is a movie tie-in with the film of the same name. Sculpted Software had already developed a Looney Tunes basketball game titled Looney Tunes B-Ball for publisher Sunsoft the previous year. It plays a lot like Space Jam. You can kind of see the development team took what they had already made with Looney Tunes B-Ball and just transposed it over to Space Jam. So looking back, it's not surprising that Acclaim Entertainment, who famously had been publishing the NBA Jam series, teamed up with Sculpted Software to create a Space Jam movie tie-in game. Well, that's all, folks, for the tidbits. Now let's jam into this review.
Whoa, I don't play defense.
As I stated in the tidbits, the game takes more of an arcade style to the rules and gameplay of basketball as opposed to a simulation style of the rules and gameplay. So just like Looney Tunes B-Ball or NBA Jam, each team plays 3-on-3. You have the choice of whether to play as the Toon Squad or the Monstars. There's really only 2 teams, so it's very limited in that aspect. If you choose the Toon Squad, it comes packed with a ton of famous Looney Tunes characters like Porky Pig, Pepe Le Pew, Daffy Duck, Yosemite Sam, Elmer Fudd, Foghorn Leghorn, Wile E. Coyote, Sylvester, the Tasmanian Devil, and of course none other than the famous Bugs Bunny. You also have Lola Bunny, who was created as kind of a quasi-love interest and I also should say slash sex object for the Space Jam movie. And of course you got Michael Jordan. His stats are maxed out, and you gotta have him on your team if you're the Toon Squad. Because doesn't everyone want to be like Mike? I mean, greatest basketball player ever. Shut up, LeBron James. The Monstar team doesn't have that great of a roster. I mean, it's the Monstars from the movie, but it's not as deep as the Toon Squad roster. You have Knot, Bang, Blanco, Bupkis, and Pound. You know what? Before I forget, I have a little rant here. The fact that the Toon Squad doesn't have freaking Bill Murray. He was in the movie. He came in at the last minute to help save the Toon Squad from the Monstars. He was there. How come you didn't add him in this game? We needed some Bill Murray. Yes, I happen to be a fan of Bill Murray. Early Bill Murray. Before he decided to do some of that weird crap. You know, back when he was the asshole Peter Venkman on Ghostbusters. That era of Bill Murray. I love him. Even in this movie, loved him. And he wasn't there. They didn't have Bill Murray. You have Michael Jordan. Of course, you gotta have Michael Jordan. He's the main character of the movie. And dare I say the game. He's on the front cover of the game. But no Bill Murray. Even just let me have him as a secret character to unlock. But he's not there. And he was a very important character to the story. Why isn't he there? Alright. Moving on. Now, like I said before, the Toon Squad stats are stacked, and a player versus player, especially a good, decent to good players, the Toon Squad's always going to cream the Monstars. Now, I only played against the computer, and depending on the difficulty you choose, the Monstars can get the upper hand on you if you're the Toon Squad, but for the most part, it's hands down, the Toon Squad wins every single time. Now, that being said, the gameplay is decent. It doesn't really do anything to wow me. I wouldn't even say its system is as deep and fun as NBA Jam. It really does feel like they kind of took the basic structure that they had created with Looney Tunes B-Ball and took it over to this game. And they didn't really add a whole lot. In fact, I think they took away some of the elements that they had in Looney Tunes B-Ball, probably because they made that game with Sun Software, so they were having to start from scratch and just using the experience and the knowledge they already had creating that game when they created this game. That being said, it really feels like maybe if the developer had had more time to bake this game in the oven, then the gameplay would have been more varied. Now, there are two modes, though honestly I can't tell the difference between them. There is the play game, which is just the Toon Squad versus the Monstars, and then there's Intergalactic Tournament, which is the Toon Squad versus the Monstars in a tournament. But since there's only two teams, it's basically the same mode. There's not really a whole lot of difference. A nice little addition are minigames that take place at the beginning of the game and at the beginning of each quarter of the game. And they take some inspiration from the movie, like the first minigame you play is Daffy Duck trying to get all of Michael Jordan's equipment so he can practice for the game. And then another one's a weird one where you're racing through space with Speedy Gonzales against a Monstar ship. Something like that. It's weird. Another minigame takes, again, inspiration from the movie, which was them trying to get, the special water or the special juice for Michael Jordan, and I could never figure it out. I know that was the goal, was to find that bottle of water, but besides that, I couldn't find it. That's the bad thing about this game with its minigames, is it doesn't really tell you how to do it. It just kind of goes, here's the minigame, throws you in there, and it doesn't tell you how to achieve the goal. You just kind of got to figure it out for yourself. And here's the catch. All the minigames are timed, so you only have like a minute, maybe 30 seconds sometimes to get all of this done. And they just kind of throw you into it and don't really explain anything. I'm not looking for my hand to be held, but I'm at least saying, hey, you need to do this and this to find what you're looking for. Instead, they just kind of throw you in it, and you have like maybe 10 seconds to learn. So in summation, with lackluster gameplay that doesn't do anything to really advance the genre, and dare I say anything to reach the same bar that NBA Jam had set, or even Sculpted Software's own Looney Tunes B-Ball had achieved. There's also not a lot of variety in the teams, since there's only 2 teams to pick from, and one team is very bare bones and basic, and the other team that is bursting with characters with maxed out skill sets. And while the minigames do break up the monotony of the basic basketball arcade game we have here, they also don't really help explain what you have to do in them, so they're more frustrating than fun. So sadly, I'm gonna have to give Space Jam's gameplay 1 bit.
Hey! Perhaps I could be of some assistance.
Out of 4.
Mike.
Whoa! I don't play defense.
All the music tracks serve as pretty much background noise. You don't really notice them too much. I mean, they're not terrible, but again, it's nothing that really catches your ear, and you won't really notice it when you're playing the game. One high point for me is the broadcaster, who will announce the basic things like when you score a 2-point goal or a 3-point goal or goaltending, and his voice reminds me of the NBA Jam sportscaster, and it's just, it kind of really gets you pumped and into the game, the way that the lines are delivered and the excitement and the sense of urgency that the sportscaster has. As it pertains to making you feel like you're in a basketball game, the sounds are all there, the sound effects, the squeaky sneakers, the sports broadcaster, the crowd, and all of that was done really well, but unfortunately, the music itself is just kind of, it's background. It's almost like they composed it, they put it in the background, they also turned it really down, they turned it down low. You know, you've heard of turning it up to 11, well, they turned this one down to a 1, or I would even say a 0.1, because it's just in the background, you don't really notice it, but it is there. So with that being said, I will give Space Jam's sound a respectable 1.5 bits.
Hey! Perhaps I could be of some assistance.
Out of 4.
He shoots. The Looney Tunes are up by 10. 1 minute remaining.
Whoa! I don't play defense.
Presentation is the high point for this game. I really love the intro to the game where you get the Space Jam logo and you see the spaceship flying around and the little Martians coming out of their ship. It's really cool. The graphics overall look really great. The PlayStation, I think, everyone remembers it as one of the first 3D consoles, but that system was probably one of the best 2D, and I would even say 2.5D, if you will, systems around. 2D games just really look awesome on the original PlayStation. The developer did a really great job getting all the characters to look just like their movie counterparts. Now, there is a bit of product placement. In the main basketball court, you clearly see the golden arches of McDonald's. So, yeah. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. You know, you're making a movie tie-in game, and maybe McDonald's had some kind of deal with the movie studio, and they're like, hey, you gotta put McDonald's in the game. The level design, well, there's not much level design there. You've got the main basketball court, and that's about it. And then you have the mini games. But the mini games are a little short, you know, like I said, 1 minute, you know, intervals in between the main games. There's not much level design going on here. I wish they would have at least put a few different basketball courts, and dare I even say, put in a few different teams. That would have been interesting as well. I think you, of course, could have had the Toon Squad versus the Monstars, but even split the teams up even more, have each team be 3 members, and you could have Bugs Bunny have a team, have Daffy Duck have his own team, have Elmer Fudd have his own team. But unfortunately, just 2 teams, 1 basketball court to play on, and about 4 or 5 mini-game locations to go to. There's just not a whole lot there. Now, as far as the story goes, the game roughly follows the story. There is a basketball game with the Toon Squad going up against the Monstars, but there's not really any cutscenes. And two of the mini games follow the story. You have Daffy Duck trying to get all of Michael's gear, and then you have Bugs Bunny looking for the water that has Michael's special stuff in it. There's those two mini games, but besides that, there's not a whole lot of story elements to the game. There's no cutscenes besides, of course, the intro to the game. And when you do win, it just shows a still image of the Toon Squad celebrating, and you hear their voices, and then it switches to showing the Monstars losing and being sad, and there's really no outro to it. Again, I'm going back to, if the development team had more time, they probably would have been able to put in a different story mode. They might have been able to give us different, teams instead of just two teams, and maybe even different locations. But I do think the product placement still would have been there with all the McDonald's stuff. So my final tally for Space Jam's presentation is an average 2 bits.
Hey! Perhaps I could be of some assistance.
Out of 4. Let's see you do better, LeBron.
Not Toon Squad.
Whoa! I don't play defense.
Space Jam on the PlayStation for me bordered between mediocre and bad. I wouldn't say it's a terrible game. There are some fun moments to be had, but when you really look at it with only really one game mode and only 2 teams to choose from, and both teams are completely unbalanced where one team is really bad and the other team is just stacked with really good players, it leaves more to be desired. But hey, you know what? I get it. The higher-ups probably wanted this game to release around the same time as the movie to maximize their profits, but I can't help but feel that if the development team had just been given just a little bit more time, we would have had a much better game. But hey, that's how the game industry is sometimes. So my final verdict for Space Jam on the original PlayStation is a strong pass for the casual collector, and I would say a recommended look, but not necessarily buy for the hardcore collector of the original PlayStation. You can find it between $6 and $10 depending on the condition you're looking for online. Well guys, that's another review in the books. I hope you guys join me next month. I'm going to be taking a look at a franchise I haven't looked at in a couple of years. I hope to see you there. Anyway guys, that's it for me. 2-Bit Jesus signing out, saying stay safe and play on. Boom, bada bum bum, boom, bada bum bum, boom, bada bum bum, boom, bada bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Oh crap! I owe Disney money. Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and as you can tell by that horrible rendition that hopefully I won't be getting copyright striked on. Please, Disney. I'm going to be taking a look at a franchise I haven't looked at in a couple of years, and that is the Indiana Jones franchise. Now, as you guys remember, a couple of years ago, I reviewed a set of games, what I called the Indiana Jones trilogy of 3D games. Now, I'm not going to be taking a look at 3 games in a row today, only one game, a game that I didn't even know existed. And it was based on the TV series / movie made for TV series, The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Now, this series starred Sean Patrick Flannery of Boondock Saints fame. Now, I really liked Boondock Saints, and I liked Boondock Saints 2, and I would like to see them round off that trilogy with the Boondock Saints 3. No, wait a minute! Focus, 2-Bit! We're here to talk about a video game, not a movie series. Anyway, so somewhere between the production of this show and the release of this show, LucasArts decided to make a game based on this series. Today we're taking a look at Instruments of Chaos, starring young Indiana Jones.
Instruments of Chaos starring young Indiana Jones was published and developed by LucasArts for the Sega Genesis. It's an action-adventure game that was released June 1st, 1994. Instruments of Chaos starring young Indiana Jones, or I'm just going to start referring to it as Instruments of Chaos because Instruments of Chaos starring young Indiana Jones is too long of a damn title for a video game if you ask me. So Instruments of Chaos is based on the television series The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which I'm guessing George Lucas was producing and working on in the early 90s to preoccupy him in between the original Star Wars trilogy and the prequel Star Wars trilogy that he would start work on in the late 90s. From the sources I found about this game, it was already in development back in 1992, a whole 2 years before the release of the game. It was also planned to be a Sega CD title, as shown in this magazine. But I'm guessing somewhere down the line, LucasArts decided to say, fuck it, and just release the game in its Sega CD-less state. Well guys, that's it for the tidbits on this title. Let's once again grab our fedora and bullwhip and review this game. Okay guys, this is probably without a doubt the worst game I've ever played when it pertains to gameplay. The hit detection is way off in this game. In some instances, I only had to be near an enemy to register a hit on Indy. On the subject of getting hit, in one level Indy would get hit and instead of, the standard 2 or 3 spaces a character normally gets knocked back to when they get hit, an enemy caused Indy to bounce around like a ping pong. It didn't help that the level was a tower, and a hit like that causes you to fly right off the tower and to your death unless your whip magically decides to grab onto something. And while I'm talking about the whip, its hit detection is also way off. I found that flinging it around got a lot better results than trying to be precise with it. This can be done by just holding down the whip button and either going clockwise or counterclockwise on the directional pad. Looking at the whip mechanics, I can tell the dev team put their main focus on the whip as you use it to take out the majority of the enemies and you need it to get past environmental obstacles. But the poor hit detection on the enemies and the environmental objects you must whip leaves the main hook the dev team intended for the gameplay partially broken. I just can't see how they messed up the whip mechanics so bad. I mean, Super Castlevania 4 came out before this game, and it still has the best whip mechanics of that generation. So it's not like they didn't have good examples to emulate. All of this is possibly due to the fact that, again, this game was intended for the Sega CD, and from what I can see here, gameplay mechanics are at best in beta and not complete. Other weapons are the revolver and bombs. The revolver works well against human enemies, and the bomb works well enough on more stationary objects. The enemies are random. It's a mix of animals and human characters tailored to the theme and location of the level. Your animal enemies may be snakes, birds, tigers, flying fish, windows, giant statues, monkeys. All the normal random shit you'd be testing out in a game before it's complete. The enemies will spawn erratically, and in some parts feel like they're just overwhelming you on the screen. The game feels unfinished. For example, the monkey will hound you constantly in the India levels. It can follow you anywhere. Its movements remind me a lot of the Bible adventure games from the NES. Moving on to the game's boss, and yes, I do mean that singularly. At the end of every level, Indy will have to fight a fedora-wearing German spy wrapped in a trench coat. You will always stumble upon him receiving plans from what looks like to me a failed Dr. Wily cosplay. He moves erratically on the screen like most of the other enemies in the game, so it's hard to nail down a pattern. Probably because the game is unfinished and the dev team didn't finish his moveset. The best method is to unload on him with your revolver or just waggle your whip at him until he dies. The game implements a timer as well for each level. Most levels have either 2 or 3 stages to them, but because of the broken game mechanics, it's very hard to beat these levels. One saving grace is the beginning of each stage, an ally of yours tells you exactly what you need to do to beat the stage. So at least you're not going in blind, but are heading into a broken game where it's near impossible to advance in the game, but also, thankfully, there's a thing called the Game Genie. This helped me out a lot at the later sections of the game. Why would I need to cheat, you ask? Well, simply put, with the broken gameplay mechanics and the random enemies that overwhelmingly spawn on top of you, makes it very hard to advance in this game. Also, this game is not very fun, so after 2 levels, I said fuck it, just like LucasArts, and used the Game Genie. Speaking of level design, you can tell that the game is unfinished here as well, with some levels raining enemies down upon you and others being almost completely devoid of enemies. There are also quite a few levels that just feel like they are on repeat, London and Egypt especially, as they just use the exact same rooms repeating in the same order and pattern, and while it only took maybe 5 or 10 minutes to complete, it felt like an eternity. So, with all this tallied up, unfinished and broken game mechanics combined with unfinished level designs leaves Instruments of Chaos's gameplay with a giant steaming turd. Yeah, that's right, just a turd. No bits. sound is possibly the high point for this game. LucasArts, I've said in many reviews before, never disappoints with sound, and they didn't here either. The music is pretty good. It makes use of the Sega Genesis sound chip. I really like the selection they had, and they switch it up a bit with each different area you go into. The sound effects are decent too. The sounds of like the gun and the grenade, when Indy gets hit, when you hit other characters, come in through clean and crisp and have a sense of immersion and believability to their sounds. The one that doesn't, again, is the whip, which, if you play this game, you can tell that that was the main focus, I think, of this game, is that whip and its mechanics. The whip sounds exactly like this. You hear that? That's me making the sound. That's exactly how the whip sounds in the game. It sounds like someone just on a microphone doing whip sounds. It is the worst whip sounds I've ever heard. Now you can go back to, say, my Indiana Jones Infernal Machine review if you want to hear a really good whip sound. That game had it. LucasArts made that game. For some reason, they couldn't do it here in Instruments of Chaos. So, with all that being said, the music being good, the sound effects being, I would say, decent to maybe mediocre, I'm going to give Instruments of Chaos's sound 1 bit out of 4. Just like sound, presentation actually has some high points to it. Young Indy looks very well detailed, although no matter what location you visit, as you visit multiple locations in this game in different regions of the world, he's always wearing the same outfit. You think when he goes to a cold place like, say, Tibet, he would have a nice warm jacket on him, but instead, he's just still wearing the same blue shirt and black vest. The enemies as well look very well detailed. That's one positive I can say about this game, is the sprites in the game, and even the backgrounds of the levels look really awesome and well detailed, but I also feel like what it could have been, because this originally was going to be a Sega CD game. So there's animations there, missing animations in the characters, and I would even say background, that I know are missing that the Sega CD would have had. One really cool animation, though, is when you unload your revolver on someone or something, Indiana will do a cool little animation where he blows the smoke off of his gun and puts it back in his holster. Like a true Indiana Jones movie, Instruments of Chaos takes you on a globe-spanning adventure. You go from Tibet to India to Egypt to England and then finally to Germany. And every level has its own unique look to it. You really feel like you're going to different locations, albeit, like I said earlier, Indiana Jones always seems to wear the same outfit to every location, no matter the climate change. The one sad part about this, and going back to this once again, is that this game is clearly in beta form, it's unfinished, and so large portions of all these levels are very empty. There's not a whole lot of enemies there, or obstacles, or platforming, and you feel like you're only playing a game that is 60 to 75% done. The story to Instruments of Chaos isn't an Indiana Jones-like story at all. There's no occult, and there's no archaeology really going on, or discovering something ancient. Young Indiana Jones is a spy for the Allies during World War I. Indiana Jones is sent around the world to stop German agents from acquiring technology that will give them the upper hand in the war. And the technologies you're stopping them from acquiring, from what I remember, they already had. Like the flamethrower, or mustard gas, or a machine gun. It's only a half-baked idea, and I feel like the plot could have been better. The crescendo to the game is the last level where you're in Germany and you have to take down a Zeppelin. Once Indiana Jones is successful in taking down the Zeppelin, the Allies congratulate him in helping them bring down the German war machine and tell him to hurry home to a country that is waiting to celebrate with him. Problem being, I think, that they never really tell you what year this this takes place in, so it could be anywhere from 1914 to 1918, and I don't think preventing the Germans from getting a flamethrower or mustard gas or a machine gun or taking down one of their Zeppelins would completely halt the German war machine and end the war, but according to Instruments of Chaos, Indiana Jones single-handedly ended World War I. And with that, you're treated to a credit scene with a pretty cool-looking Zeppelin in flames. It reminds me a little bit of the art style from Full Throttle. So in summation, the presentation is actually decent. The characters and environments are very well detailed, though very empty because the game is left unfinished. So there's a lot there that I know is missing. That, knowing that it was supposed to be a Sega CD game, I can't help but feel that maybe we would have had some FMV cutscenes, or some extra animations, or even, dare I say, because with a CD you could hold more room than a cart, dare I say, extra levels to play. I just feel that there's a lot missing here. And so my final tally for Instrument of Chaos's presentation is 1 bit out of 4.
Wow, that is without a doubt the worst game I've ever reviewed, even if you want to call it a game, because I don't even know if it's a game. What the hell, LucasArts? You've given us Monkey Island, you've given us Grim Fandango, you've given us Full Throttle, Dark Forces 2, Jedi Knight, some of the greatest games I've ever had the privilege to play. And yet, you create this giant turd. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't LucasArts' fault. Maybe it was on Sega's end, because, you know, back then, Sega had a habit of coming out with add-ons and not supporting them, so they're like, hey, Sega CD, Sega 32X, so maybe LucasArts, somewhere in developing this game, saw that and like, well, crap, they're about to drop the Sega CD anyway, why are we creating this game? Let's just ship it out, even though it's in beta form. By the way, this game is not complete, it's in beta. That's obvious. So they were like, let's ship it out, even though it's not finished, and let's just slap it into a Sega Genesis cart and try to recoup our money, you know, because Sega's obviously dropping this add-on and moving on. Maybe that happened, or just maybe they ran out of money and time to work on the game, so they're like, fuck it, throw it in a cart, ship it out, let's try to make some money. I mean, I'm open to possibilities here, but ultimately, folks, my job is not to find out what went wrong with this game, it's to review it. So my final verdict for Instruments of Chaos starring young Indiana Jones is a strong, and I mean strong, pass for the casual and hardcore collector of the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive. But you know what? You know what I do recommend? If you ever run across this game in the wild or you see it online, destroy it immediately. It'll cost you around $6 to $12 depending on its condition, but trust me, it's well worth it, and you're doing society a service by getting this game and destroying it and erasing it from the history books of video games, because it just does not belong in this world. Well guys, that's it for me for this month, and I pray to the almighty Jesus horse that next month's game is a lot better than this torturous piece of shit game I had to play this month. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm 2-Bit Jesus signing out, saying stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and welcome to the April 2019 edition of the 2-Bit Review. Now, April, as everyone knows, comes before May, and I always do a Star Wars review for May the 4th, which is a day that we celebrate everything Star Wars. It's a fabulous holiday. Now, I know that it's not a real holiday, but damn it, it's a real holiday to me, and I love celebrating it, and I love taking a look at games. That being said, I kind of forgot to have a game for April because I was so focused on the review coming up in May. But don't worry, folks, I did find a game. It's actually a game from my Lost Review archive. Yes, I have one of those. It's reviews that just didn't come together in time to be uploaded, but I still kept all the footage and the scripts for them, thinking that I could use them at a later date, like today. So as you guys can probably already tell, because this video has been uploaded, there's a thumbnail, but also I'm wearing a shirt hinting at what we're taking a look at today. And what is that game? Well, my friends, that game is Beavis and Butt-Head for the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive.
Change it.
Beavis and Butthead is an action game with both single-player and co-op modes. Beavis and Butthead was released in North America in 1994 for various consoles. The version we're looking at today is the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive version. It was published by Viacom New Media and developed by Radical Entertainment. Now, with these slim pickings on tidbits done, let's jump right into this review. Fart knockers.
Fart knocker. Fart knocker. Change it.
The plot of the game is Gwar is coming to town, and Beavis and Butthead get their tickets to the show, but a hungry poodle steals them. Then after a long chase, pukes them right up. Ooh, gross. Now, just before the boys get to grab their tickets, they're shredded by a lawnmower and scattered across town. So the goal of the game is to go around collecting pieces of tickets so Beavis and Butthead can rock out at the Gwar show. Your weapons are very much in the style of the show. Beavis has a burp attack while Butthead has a fart attack. You will collect other weapons across the game, like the spitball straws, toy guns, and baseball bat with a boxing glove on it. Other items include the fishing pole for finding important items or people for the main game, or useless items for that matter as well. Another item you can use is the chainsaw, which only has a one-time use, but man, let me tell you, it is so worth it. The controls are pretty straightforward. Holding A will make Beavis and Butthead run, B jumps, and C is your action/attack button. While the controls are straightforward, they could have put a little bit more finesse into them, as the controls aren't bad but could be less stiff when needing to do precise platforming. There are 7 areas to travel to, and most of the tickets are hidden in areas that will require other items to access them. So you will be revisiting certain areas as you backtrack to get the ticket pieces. The enemies are very basic. There's only 2 types. The first is an aggressive type that will require you to spam attacks to kill, and the second being passive enemies that you need to avoid attacks from. But besides those 2 basic types, there's really no other types of enemies. So that being said, I feel this game could have used a bit more diversity in its enemy types. A good thing about this game is it implements a password system, so you don't have to start the entire game over again. The bad thing is you must remember the password or write it down, which honestly a lot of times for me, when I get into a game, I forget to do that. A continue system would have been preferable personally for me. As I said before, you must go to every location to collect the ticket pieces. I really enjoyed this part of the game as it reminds me a little bit of Monkey Island in that it takes a certain item found somewhere else to complete a task in a given level. A lot of the fun is just the exploration of the levels, which aren't too long, so you won't be grinding through Burger World or the mall. All the ways you get ticket pieces are very reminiscent of the antics from the show, and got a good chuckle out of me. With decent gameplay and on-par level design, I give Beavis and Butthead's gameplay 2 bits. Out of 4.
Fart knocker. Fart knocker. Change it.
Another excellent job done by Radical Entertainment. While the only song from the show that makes it into the game is the main theme, all the levels of the game have an awesome soundtrack that fits well with the Beavis and Butthead style. The sound effects are decent, and while not a lot of voices are used in this game, what is there is placed perfectly. So with rockin' Genesis music and decent effects, Beavis and Butthead's sound gets 2.5 bits. Out of 4.
Fart knocker. Fart knocker. Change it.
Presentation is excellent. The development team made this game look just like the TV show. With its art style and environment, even the basic enemies are characters from the show. The development team did a great job making you feel immersed in Beavis and Butthead's world. As stated in the gameplay, the plot of the game is Beavis and Butthead getting tickets to Gwar. After a misunderstanding with a poodle and a lawnmower, their tickets are scattered across town. After lots of hijinks our duo gets in during their quest, the tickets are finally pieced together. So with tickets in hand, Beavis and Butthead are able to go to the show. Here there are 2 endings to the game. Now, you can go through the front door and the boys will enjoy the show, or you can fight your way to the back and get in costume and rock out with Gwar on stage. The latter being the better ending, if you personally ask me. The overall presentation is done well, a quirky plot with lots of hijinks along the way, and a world looking just like its source material gives Beavis and Butthead's presentation 3 bits. out of 4.
Might not. Change it.
My final verdict for Beavis and Butthead on the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive is a highly recommended get for the casual and hardcore collector of the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive. Though I must warn you guys, this game is geared towards co-op, so playing with a friend, a family member, or a significant other will be a lot more fun as opposed to playing by yourself in single player mode. It's just not as fulfilling in my opinion. You can find it online for around $10 depending on the condition you're looking for. Anyway guys, let's wrap this up. That's it for this month's review. I hope you guys join me next month for my annual May the 4th Star Wars review. I've been doing it for like, 4 or 5 years now. I have a lot of fun doing it. I hope you guys join me for it. Anyway guys, I'm 2-Bit Jesus signing out, saying stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up and welcome to the 4th annual May the 4th Be With You review. I've coined that term for it because these reviews fall on May the 4th, which is a celebration of everything Star Wars, and I do my little part for this day by reviewing a Star Wars game. And today, things come full circle as I'm taking a look at the final entry in this franchise. Yes, folks, today we are reviewing Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy.
Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense, Mr. Lucas.
Silence!
Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy is a first and third-person shooting action game released September 16th, 2003 on the PC and November 18th, 2003 for the Xbox. It was developed by Raven Software and published by LucasArts in North America and by Activision in other markets. It's the sequel to Jedi Outcast and is the final entry into the Jedi Knight franchise. This is the first installment in which Kyle Katarn is not the playable character. Jedi Academy, like its predecessor, is powered by the Quake 3 Arena engine, adding modifications and extra lightsaber effects, improving upon the previous installment. Now, there's some interesting little history after this game's release. Following Disney Company's decision to close LucasArts in 2013, the development team of Jedi Academy released the source code online, but sadly it was later removed because of some proprietary code that was inside the source code of the game. With these little tidbits out of the way, let's find the droids we're looking for inside this review. Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense, Mr. Lucas.
Silence!
To start off, all the gameplay elements from Jedi Outcast have carried over to this installment, but this time around, they went all in on the lightsaber and force powers elements of the game. And while gunplay is still in the game, it's obvious it was a carryover from the previous installment, as from what I saw, there were no additions to the guns or their mechanics. But my same complaint still remains that it should have evolved with its contemporary FPS brethren, such as Halo 2. There are 2 modes to this game, single player, which is the story mode of the game, and multiplayer, which is still as fun as Jedi Outcast's multiplayer, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which is exactly the mantra Raven used here. As I said earlier, the development team went all in on the lightsabers and force powers, which, I mean, they should, given the game's title. You can construct your own lightsaber, choosing the hilt and the color. As you progress through the game, new saber styles become available, like dual-wielding lightsabers made famous by Anakin Skywalker in Attack of the Clones, or the Jedi Knight series' own Dark Jedi Bach. Also, the double-bladed lightsaber made famous by the infamous Darth Maul in film, and Exar Kun in the expanded universe. Oh shit, okay, yeah, sorry Disney. Yeah, you're right, you erased all that great literature, comic books, and all that good stuff for your precious movies. So yes, I meant the Legends universe. Yes, the Legends universe. You don't just have control over your lightsaber style and form at the start of the game, you choose the gender, race, and clothing of your character. The game also allows you the choice of what force powers to level up after a mission. This allows a lot of freedom for the player to make their own unique Jedi customized to their playstyle, but Kyle and Luke will keep an eye on your progress and admonish you for using and leveling up dark powers at the end of every mission. Raven has also changed up the level design. In Academy, like in Outcast, you travel across the galaxy visiting some new locations as well as some familiar ones from the movies, like Tatooine and Hoth. The linearity of the level design has been cut down, allowing you to progress through levels in the order you choose. But you still have to complete a majority of these missions in order to progress to the next chapter of the game. Raven, I feel, improved greatly upon the level design, lightsabers, and force power mechanics. They still came up short on the gunplay, but that isn't the main focus of this game. Everything comes together very well, and honestly, at this point, Raven knew exactly what they were doing with this style of game. Jedi Academy's gameplay gets 3 bits.
Silence!
Out of 4. Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense, Mr. Lucas.
Silence!
After all these years of reviewing LucasArts games, what can I say? The sound is awesome. Classic music from the films, great sound effects, great sound quality. The voice acting leaves much to be desired still. It's a bit stiff in some parts, but that could be due to the placement by the sound team and not the voice actors themselves. I prefer the voice actress for the player's character over the actor. She actually sounds normal through most of the game. It's only when she turns to the dark side that she really camps up that evil tone in her voice. The voice actor sounds like a pompous ass through the entire game. Now, something that shouldn't have surprised me, but the voice actress for the female character of the game is none other than Jennifer Hale, veteran voice actress who also voiced the legendary Shepard in the Mass Effect franchise. But with all that out of the way, let's give Jedi Academy's sound 3 bits.
Silence!
Out of 4. Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense, Mr. Lucas.
Silence!
The graphics look pretty good in this game. They seem to have fixed the freak face facial animation from Outcast. Guess Raven realized people don't bare their teeth at each other when talking. The facial animation, however, is still rather stiff and lifeless. The lighting and shadows have gotten a bump up, especially the lightsabers. Overall, the characters, environments, and lighting look great and are solid. So, let's move on to the plot, and it goes as follows. You take the role of Jaden Core, who could be a variety of races or gender, depending on what you chose in the customization menus. Jaden is a new student arriving at the Jedi Academy on Yavin 4, along with other fellow students, one of them being your friend and inevitable traitor, Rosh. On the way to the Academy, the shuttle is shot down by an unknown enemy. As you and Rosh make your way to the Academy, you encounter stormtroopers and a Dark Jedi. You eventually come upon the Dark Jedi leader using a staff to drain energy from the temple, but you are caught and knocked unconscious. Jedi Masters Kyle Katarn and Luke Skywalker arrive with Rosh to check on you and investigate the attack. Later, you and Rosh become apprenticed to Kyle, and the two of you begin training. Rosh's over-competitiveness puts you in some dangerous positions during training, setting up a rivalry and eventual bad guy turn with Rosh. You are then dispatched on various missions in the game. You return to the temple and overhear Rosh expressing that he feels Kyle is trying to hold them back, really planting that seed that Rosh is on the path of the dark side. Luke tells the assembled students that the Dark Jedi who attacked the temple are members of the Sith cult called the Disciples of Ragnos. A member of this cult was able to infiltrate the Academy during the attack and stole Luke's journal. This has allowed the cult to find places strong in the Force and drain them of their energy. It also gives the development team an excuse to let you visit famous locations from the movies. You then begin yet another tour of the galaxy. You eventually visit Hoth and investigate Echo Base, where you encounter Imperials and Alora, the Dark Jedi infiltrator. She flees once Jaden defeats her. Jaden returns to the Academy and finds that Rosh has not yet returned from his mission. You accompany Kyle in an investigation of Darth Vader's fortress. There, it is discovered that Rosh has joined the Disciples of Ragnos. I mean, what a twist! We didn't see that coming. It's not like they've been planting the seed very obviously right in front of us for the last quarter of the game. Brilliant, brilliant twist there. Kyle arrives at this point, and the leader of the cult is revealed to be Tavion, the former apprentice of Jedi Outcast's antagonist, Desan. Tavion has recovered the Scepter of Ragnos, which has the power to drain and release Force energy. Tavion escapes with Rosh, destroying your lightsaber in the process. You and Kyle narrowly escape and return to the Academy. You are then promoted to Jedi Knight and get to construct a new lightsaber and choose a different fighting style if you so desire. Luke comes to the conclusion that Tavion plans to resurrect an ancient Sith Lord, Marka Ragnos, who that's who the cult worships, so obviously that's who they would be trying to resurrect. So, using the power of the staff, they plan to resurrect this dude. As the Jedi prepare to battle Tavion and her followers on Korriban, Kyle informs you that he has received a call of help from Rosh. Though skeptical, you agree to help. You have to fight your way through a mining facility, and you once again are confronted by Allura, and you also find Rosh, who asks for help and claims to have seen the error of his ways. This is the point where you must choose between light and dark side. My first playthrough, I chose light. You spare Rosh and save him from Allura, but not before she gets to cut off his left arm. Because it's Star Wars. Someone must lose a limb. You defeat Allura and head to Korriban to confront Tavion, fighting your way through her followers alongside your fellow Jedi. Once you defeat her, she uses the scepter to invoke Ragnos' spirit, who possesses her body. After the epic final boss fight with Ragnos, you destroy the scepter, banishing Ragnos' spirit back into its tomb and killing Tavion in the process. Now back at the Academy, you are reunited with Rosh, who has recovered. You are then honored by Luke, Kyle, and the rest of the Jedi Order. The dark ending goes quite differently. You kill Rosh but refuse to join the Sith or help resurrect Ragnos. Instead, you kill Allura and then head to Korriban. You then leave a trail of death and destruction on your way to confront Tavion. Killing her, you steal the scepter and then are confronted by Kyle. After defeating Kyle, you escape with the scepter. Kyle is rescued by Luke and laments losing both Rosh and Jaden, vowing to hunt you down. Luke wishes Kyle good luck and notes that although you have turned to the dark side, there is always hope and Jaden may not be beyond redemption. The final scene cuts to you on the bridge of a Star Destroyer beginning a campaign of conquest. Obviously, all the Jedi Knight games' canon endings have been the light side ending. And also, it gives a happy ending to the final entry of the franchise. But, and I do say but, if this was still an ongoing franchise, the dark ending would be the most intriguing, as the player has created and built a new antagonist for Kyle Katarn in the Jedi Knight franchise. But alas, that will never be. The story paints by the numbers and leaves much to be desired. At the end of the day, I would say it's a decent plot. That, with some solid graphics, gives Jedi Academy's presentation 2 bits.
Silence!
Out of 4.
Not yet. I'm one of Kyle Katarn's students. He's talking to some locals. We're investigating a cult that's been cropping up.
Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense, Mr. Lucas.
Silence!
Jedi Academy is a fun game that made a lot of improvements upon the gameplay and presentation of its predecessor. That being said, Jedi Academy didn't quite capture my imagination or immerse me in the Star Wars universe the same way that Dark Forces or even Jedi Knight did. You can find this game physically online for the Xbox for around 20 bucks depending on the condition you are looking for, but most importantly you can find it digitally on PC through Steam for about 10 bucks and on the Xbox Store for 10 bucks on Xbox One through backwards compatibility. Well guys, it looks like we are finally closing the book on the Dark Forces / Jedi Knight franchise, and I feel like we're taking one small step into a much larger universe of Star Wars games. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you guys are looking forward to it too. Well guys, that's it for this review. May the 4th be with you, and as always, stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and welcome to yet another 2-Bit review. This month is very special because I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been trying to get one review out every month this year, and I've been fairly successful at it, but this month is different. I'm going to be doing 3 reviews this month, and the reason I'm doing it is because Toy Story 4 is coming out. Now, I don't know why we're getting a Toy Story 4, but Disney apparently wants to break into that Pixar Toy Story piggy bank. My guess is maybe to pay for their floundering Star Wars franchise, which is not doing too well right now, so they need to overcompensate somewhere. So this month's 3 games I'm reviewing are going to be based on the 3 previous movies in the franchise, and today's review in particular is going to be Toy Story for the Sega Genesis.
You are a toy!
Toy Story is a side-scrolling platform game published by Disney Interactive Studios and developed by Traveler's Tales for the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, and PC. It is the tie-in game for the film of the same name. The Genesis and SNES versions are essentially the same. Major differences being the SNES with its larger color range looks brighter and more colorful, and the sprites have more detail to them. Though the SNES version is weirdly cropped so you don't get to appreciate the full picture of the game. And while the Genesis doesn't have that expanded color range, it does have one thing the SNES version doesn't have, and that's an extra level where you ride RC to the moving van. Another major difference, the SNES version, while having better sound quality, is missing Toy Story's main theme, You've Got a Friend in Me. The Genesis version does have this track. Playing both of them, I noticed the Genesis has better overall controls, as the SNES version's hit detection feels slightly off. With these differences in mind, I decided to focus on the Sega Genesis version of the game. With the tidbits done, guys, let's go to infinity and beyond in this review.
You are a toy!
You control Woody through 18 stages, 17 on the Super Nintendo. These levels take you through the entire plot of the movie. It's a classic platformer in that you must start on the left side of the level and platform your way to the end of the right side, with obstacles and enemies in between you and the end of the level. Woody has his pull-string whip, which will temporarily incapacitate enemies but not kill them, the exception being Nightmare Buzz. The pull string also acts like Indiana Jones's whip, as you can lasso hooks in the levels to swing over obstacles and chasms. The game occasionally switches up the gameplay with levels like controlling RC in a top-down perspective, with a time trial style racer where you must knock Buzz out the window before RC runs out of batteries. Sega also has the exclusive RC level where you are trying to get to Andy's moving van. This level has a sort of outrun style to it. There is even a first-person mode similar to Wolfenstein 3D that has Woody in the claw machine collecting toy aliens. The controls work well, and the level design, I would say, is fair. Traveler's Tales gives a lot of variety that wasn't necessary but is very much welcomed. Gameplay gets 3 bits.
To infinity and beyond!
Out of 4. The music variety is great. You have the main theme of Toy Story plus music that fits well with the game and Toy Story's style. The sound quality, however, can be a little rough as the voices and songs are compressed, and at certain points in the game it's incredibly distracting. It sounds as if your TV speakers are busted. All the minimal voice work that is in the game has this effect to them. The Sega Genesis has great music, and I have seen good voice quality on the system before, so I believe it's not the limitations of the system, but of the development team. Toy Story's sound gets 1.5 bits.
To infinity and beyond!
Out of 4.
You are a toy!
Graphics look great, the world and characters are well designed and look exactly like their movie counterparts, though maybe due to the Genesis's color range, the game is pretty dark in some spots and has a dim, soft yellow fluorescent light bulb filter on the screen. It's not too distracting. In fact, I didn't really notice this until I did direct comparisons with the SNES version. The game follows the plot of the movie almost religiously. You play Woody, Andy's favorite toy. When Andy gets a new spaceman toy, Buzz Lightyear, Woody gets pushed to the side, and in his jealousy, he decides to get rid of Buzz. Through a bunch of misadventures, Buzz and Woody get picked up by Sid, a boy who mistreats toys. Woody and Buzz become friends and work together to escape Sid's house and reunite with their owner, Andy. This is an extremely condensed synopsis of the plot of the game, but it essentially follows that path. Usually, movie games fail miserably at this by either loosely following the movie's plot or ignoring it entirely and doing its own side story. The presentation comes together adequately with very few flaws. Presentation gets 2 bits.
To infinity and beyond!
Out of 4.
You are a toy!
Toy Story on the Sega Genesis, I would say, is a decent game. It's primarily a platformer, but I like the little curveballs and gameplay they threw at us with the Wolfenstein 3D first-person level where you're saving the alien toys, or even the Outrun-style RC level where you're trying to get to the moving van. Unfortunately, the Super Nintendo version does not have these levels, and also the weird cropping they did on the screen, and the fact that the hit detection is a little off, especially compared to the Sega Genesis version. I'm not going to be recommending that one. My final verdict for Toy Story on the Sega Genesis is a recommended look, but I wouldn't say necessarily buy for the casual, and I would say a must-buy for the hardcore collector of the Sega Genesis. You can find it online for around $8 depending on the condition you are looking for. Well guys, that wraps up my first review of the trilogy of Toy Story video games. I hope you guys join me next week where we're going to be taking a look at a game based on Toy Story 2. See you then, and as always, stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and welcome to the second week of the trilogy of Toy Story video games. Now last week, of course, we took a look at Toy Story 1 on the Sega Genesis and looked a little bit at the Super Nintendo version, but this week we're taking a step out of the 16-bit era of video games and into the early 3D era of video games on the PlayStation 1 and Nintendo 64. So without further ado, folks, let's review Toy Story 2, Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue.
Stealing Woody!
What? He can't take Woody! It's illegal!
Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue is an action platform game based on the movie Toy Story 2. Published by Activision and developed by Traveller's Tales, it was released in 1999 and 2000 for the N64, PlayStation, Dreamcast, and PC. Today we are looking at the PS1 version, but I also have the N64 version. The main differences I can tell is the 64 has slightly sharper graphics but is missing the FMV movie scenes that the other versions have, and from what I've played, the PS1 version runs a lot smoother. An article from People dated November 26, 1998 shows an enemy in the game sporting a mustache, bullet bandolier, and a sombrero. Activision and Disney decided to change the character after a peaceful demonstration outside the Santa Monica headquarters of Activision. The activists protested the character for being a Mexican stereotype. To be clear, this character does not appear in the movie and was an invention of Activision's for the game. This isn't the only time this company has been in hot water, but that can be a video altogether by itself. Well, that's it for the tidbits, so let's ride like the wind into this review.
Stealing Woody!
What? He can't take Woody! It's illegal!
Toy Story 2 is the reverse of Toy Story. You play Buzz Lightyear and have to save Woody. You platform battle and collect across 15 levels in the quest to save Woody. Buzz has his trusty laser, which has a charge to deal out more damage. You can also go into a first-person view for a more precise shot, and can pick up a power-up that has limited ammo but deals out more damage. There is also a spin attack that Buzz does with his wings. The wings also give Buzz a double jump ability. The controls are solid for the most part. The first person view is a little stiff, but is passable. You also have basic video game items like extra lives and health in the form of batteries. Your main goal in each level is to collect Pizza Planet tokens. Every level has 5 tokens. You collect them by completing different tasks for characters like Ham, Mr. Potato Head, and Slinky, completing challenges, races, solving puzzles, and defeating sub-bosses of the levels. You will be backtracking a bit to levels as certain tokens require special power-ups that can only be unlocked by progressing further into the main game. You have the barrier that protects Buzz from damage, rocket boots that help you speed through areas, the disc launcher that heat sinks to enemies, the grappling hook to help you get to higher areas, and the hover boots that help you fly up to inaccessible areas. Now you only need 1 token to beat a level, but as you progress through the game, levels require a higher number of tokens to unlock them. So collect all you can while you're there to keep backtracking to a minimum. The enemy AI is pretty dumb and do not provide much of a challenge. The only challenge to be had in the game really is from the sub-boss fights and the boss fights. Enemies are toy-based and keep mostly to the theme of the level you are on. The level design is adequate, not too short, not too long. Every level is based on a location from the movie, meaning every level fits well within the Toy Story world. So with a collectathon that is not too overwhelming, adequate level design with subpar enemies, and decent controls, gameplay gets 2 bits.
To infinity and beyond!
Out of 4.
Stealing Woody!
What? He can't take Woody! It's illegal!
The sound effects and music are great, which is kinda strange to me as I'm more accustomed to movie tie-in games phoning it in on this aspect of games. Traveller's Tales, however, did not. All the tracks to the levels fit well with the theme, and most importantly are composed well. The FMV scenes sound a bit compressed, but that's about all I can say bad about the sound quality. I give sound 3 bits.
To infinity and beyond!
Out of 4.
Stealing Woody!
What? He can't take Woody! It's illegal!
Toy Story 2's graphics have not aged too well. But this was the early age, the pioneer era, if you will, of 3D gaming. And with that in mind, the world and characters look almost identical to their movie counterparts, minus the odd-shaped polygon or facial expressions Mr. Potato has, or even Woody has at the end of the game. The enemies are very generic. They are just your basic assortment of toys with no real standouts aside from the sub-bosses and bosses. The bosses match their levels fairly well, and only 2 of them are directly from the movie, that being Emperor Zurg and Stinky Pete. The plot follows closely to that of the movie. Woody has been toy-napped, and it's up to Buzz and the gang to travel from Andy's house all the way to the airport to save Woody. You visit every location that is in the film, plus a few extra areas to help fill the game out. As you progress through the game, you're treated to full-motion videos from the movie. This helps add to the narrative and lets the game follow along more closely to the movie, as the levels are more gameplay-based, with not a whole lot of story going on inside them. The ending is the same as the movie. You defeat Stinky Pete, save Woody, and head home to Andy's to celebrate with new friends Jessie and Bullseye. So with decent early 3D era graphics and a plot that stays loyal to the movie, I give presentation 2 bits.
To infinity and beyond!
Out of 4.
Stealing Woody!
What? He can't take Woody! It's illegal!
Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue, I would say, is a decent game. It has some solid controls, but gameplay, while fun in some aspects, I don't feel challenges you enough. The levels are great. They visit every location in the movie and even expand upon those locations. And the story follows the plot of the movie fairly well. But all of this together in a package, I feel, doesn't launch this game quite out of the orbit of mediocrity. My final verdict for Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue is a recommended look, but not necessarily buy for the casual or hardcore collector of the PlayStation and Nintendo 64. I would only suggest buying it if you want to 100% your collection for that system, or you're a Toy Story fan. And to those people, I say you can buy it online for around $8 depending on the condition you're looking for, or better yet, on PSN for just $6. Well guys, that concludes the second entry in our trilogy of reviews. I hope you guys join me next week where we're taking a look at a game based on Toy Story 3. I'll see you there, and of course, as always folks, stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and welcome to the final entry in my trilogy of reviews based on the Toy Story video games. Today, we're doing something a little uncommon. We're taking a look at a game that was made within the last decade. Now, anyone who's familiar with my channel knows that I typically review games that were made like 15, 20, even 30 years ago. So this is a little uncommon for me. So the game we're taking a look at today is Toy Story 3, the video game for the PlayStation 3. Let's jump right in.
Toy Story 3, the video game, is an action platformer based on the film of the same name. It was published by Disney Interactive Studios and developed by Avalanche Software for the PlayStation 3, Wii, Xbox 360, PC, and Mac. Toy Story 3 is the first game in the franchise not to be developed by Traveler's Tales for the main home consoles. Most of the voice cast from the film lent their voices to the game, with the exception of Tom Hanks for Woody, Tim Allen for Buzz Lightyear, and Kelsey Grammer for Stinky Pete. The PS3 version has an exclusive character, Emperor Zurg, available in Woody's Roundup game mode. The version we will be looking at today is the PS3, although the 360 and Wii versions are similar in play and look to the PS3, minus the Wii version's downgraded textures, and the bump down in resolution. An interview from PlayStation UK with the developers reveals they wanted to give Pixar choices rather than dictate play, so they offered 2 pitches when they went to them for ideas for the game. The first was the more traditional blueprint of the movie license game, where the game follows the film and hits the main points of the plot. Their second pitch was an open sandbox mode, which they called the Toy Box mode. Pixar loved the ideas and suggested that they develop both. With these tidbits done, let's cap off the Toy Story trilogy of games in this review. Controls are very responsive. The gameplay overall is very tight and well produced. Toy Story 3 checks a lot of boxes in gameplay variety. You got your more traditional 3D platforming with action elements, collectibles strewn throughout the game. The collectibles are done well here as they aren't overwhelming and you have to explore a little bit to find them. You can view them at Al's Toy Barn that can be selected from the hub board game area. Speaking of that hub area, you can access all the story mode levels and the toy box mode in this hub, making everything simple and accessible without having to return to the start screen. Another gameplay element is the on-rails shooter level and the aforementioned toy box mode, which is an open world sandbox mode that lets you build up and customize your own western town. This game gives a lot of variety but is missing two core elements seen in Toy Story 1 and 2, both focused on 2D/3D platforming while throwing a couple of curveballs in gameplay. Toy Story 3 just feels all over the place to me and lacks the focus its predecessors had. The second core element is challenge. Now granted, Toy Story 1 and 2 aren't terribly hard games, but they do push back on the player with some challenging sections. I did not see that at all in Toy Story 3. In fact, I felt like my hand was being held the entire time. That said, I had fun playing this game. It has two modes, a short story mode that loosely follows the movie's plot, and toy box mode, where you can tell that this was the main focus of the game. Hell, the game even told me to play this mode while I was still trying to beat the story mode. It's as if the game is conscious of the fact that the story mode lacks depth. Toy Box is an open-ended sandbox where you build up your own western town while doing missions from other characters in the town. I'm sure I could have gotten invested in Toy Box mode had I played it a little more, but I was expecting a continuation of the previous game's formula and focusing on a story mode that follows the movie's plot. Unlike its predecessors, Toy Story 3 lets you play Woody, Buzz, and Jessie. They all roughly play the same with little differences that you will need to take advantage of. Woody can use his pull string to swing across some areas, Buzz can throw characters across long distances, and Jessie is the most agile and can land on certain small spaces. With tight controls, lots of variety, but a game that has little challenge or focus in story mode gives Toy Story 3's gameplay 2 bits.
So long, partner.
Out of 4. When it comes to modern games, there should be no excuses for poor sound quality. There is no storage limitations from cartridges or discs holding you back, and there is no hardware limitations holding you back either for audio. Toy Story 3 delivers on this. The music is awesome with the main Toy Story theme, plus what sounds like the movie's original score put into the game. You feel immersed in the Toy Story world. The voice work is excellent. The guys that did Woody and Buzz sound a lot like their movie counterparts, Tim Allen and Tom Hanks. Toy Story 3's sound gets a rare, perfect 4 bits.
So long, partner.
Out of 4. The graphics look phenomenal. All the characters look like they were taken right out of the movie. I love the lighting in this game. It looks awesome. The scale as well is awesome. The areas you are in for the most part are mundane settings like a room or a basement, but it is from the perspective of a toy, so a desk becomes a massive object to be climbed. This is a big budget game, and you can tell with the huge environments and attention to detail in the characters and settings. The story loosely follows the movie's plot and is told retrospectively by Ham to Bonnie's toys after Andy has given them away. You hit a lot of, but not all of the big plot points from Toy Story 3. It spans across 8 levels, allowing you to visit all of the movie's locations from Andy's house, Sunnyside Daycare, the dump, and Bonnie's house. Parts of the main story felt off, like Rex playing the old Buzz Lightyear game. This level allows you to play the game that was in the opening of Toy Story 2 and allow Rex to finally beat Zurg. It's a fun level, but didn't really feel connected to the story. Another is Bonnie's house, where Bonnie is playing with Woody. Again, a fun level, but only loosely based on what actually happened. Lotso, the evil bear and main antagonist of the movie, isn't even the last boss you fight, like Stinky Pete was in Toy Story 2. He does appear, but only briefly. The finale of the story is Woody, Buzz, and Jessie working together to save everyone from the trash incinerator. After that, there is a brief summary of how the toys ended up at Bonnie's, and then one last level of Buzz fighting off zombie muffins, which I'm guessing is connected to the last scene of the movie where Andy played with his toys for the last time. There are major characters missing, possibly due to licensing issues. Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head are missing, as well as Ken and Barbie. You would have thought that with all the effort that went into making this game, that Disney would have forked over the cash to get all of Toy Story 3's characters into this game. It's clear that the story mode got shortchanged for this Toy Box mode, which I guess you could argue is a continuation of Toy Story 3 as Woody, Buzz, and Jessie, and the rest of the gang are living out their lives in Bonnie's room/imagination. With a vapid story mode but great production values in lighting, graphics, and level design, presentation gets 2.5 bits.
So long, partner.
Out of 4.
Toy Story 3, the video game, it's okay. I mean, the gameplay mechanics were there, very solid. The production values are really good for this game, but there's just no challenge there. The game lets you just walk all over it, and I like for there to be some pushback on me. This game doesn't, I feel like I have to try to fail at this game. That's bad, when you have to actually actively try to kill yourself to die in the game. Most games will punish you, whether taking a life or taking some of your health if you make a mistake, but they're fair about it, where this game's like, oh, you made a mistake? I'm not going to really punish you. Do whatever you want. And I don't like that. I think that takes away from the game. And the fact that the story mode of the game barely glosses over the plot of the movie, for me, Toy Story 3's plot is the best out of all of the movies. It's my favorite of all of them, because while it's bittersweet, everything comes full circle and everything is just nicely tied up. It's the perfect ending to a trilogy, and it's probably the best story of that trilogy. And the fact that this game just glosses it over just so it can have an open world toy box mode where you do missions for people and build up a town, yeah, that's fun and that's cool, but the fact that it's just like, this is more important than following this great story, it takes a lot away from me. So my final verdict for Toy Story 3, the video game, on PS3 is a recommended look, but I would say not buy for the casual or hardcore collector of the PS3. The only people I could think that would want this game are hardcore Toy Story fans, and for those people you can find it physically online for around $20 depending on condition, and also digitally on PSN for around $20. Same with 360, I believe it's around $20. And then you can get it on Xbox Marketplace for also around $20. Well guys, this caps off my trilogy of reviews based on the Toy Story video games. I'm kind of sad that it's ending on a bad note with Toy Story 3, and I hope this isn't a bad omen for Toy Story 4. I mean, Toy Story 3, the movie, was the perfect ending to that series, and you're playing with fire by doing a sequel to that. But you know what, I'm going to keep an open mind, and I'm going to go watch this movie, and who knows, maybe this will kick off a whole new trilogy that we'll absolutely love, and in 20 years from now, Old Man 2-Bit is going to take a retrospective look at the second trilogy of Toy Story video games. Well guys, that's it for this review. It is off in the history books. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all of your support, guys. I really enjoy doing these videos for you, and I just wanted you to know I really appreciate each and every one of you who tune in, comment, give the thumbs up, subscribe, and share these videos out. You guys are awesome. And I hope you guys join me next month for the next review. It's going to be an interesting one. I can't wait to talk about it. Well guys, that's it for me today, and as always, stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and welcome to the July 2019 edition of the 2-Bit Review. Interestingly enough, I wasn't planning on doing a review this month because, as you guys remember, last month I did 3 reviews back-to-back with the Toy Story video game trilogy. So a few months ago, Gags Gaming put in a review request for Castlevania 64 or Legacy of Darkness. Now, I thought I could either take this month off, or hey, why not go ahead and review this game for this viewer? And I decided to do that because a few years back I did Donkey Kong 64. That was a viewer requested review, and I didn't get to it till like a year later, but then there was so much going on. We were doing the podcast then, and I had like 20-something reviews lined up at that point that I was like chewing through and trying to do, and I always felt bad that I didn't do that review right away. I put it on the back burner and didn't do it till like a year later. So I'm only a couple of months late on this one, but for Gags Gaming, we are taking a look at Castlevania Legacy of Darkness for the Nintendo 64.
Castlevania Legacy of Darkness is an action-adventure platforming game developed and published by Konami for the Nintendo 64. It was released in North America for the holiday season of 1999. It's the prequel and also slight remake of Castlevania 64, with improved textures, added enemies, and reworked levels. Legacy of Darkness is the definitive version of Castlevania 64 and shows that the original game was rushed to release, as Legacy's main character Cornell was featured in early press information for Castlevania 64, but was removed before the 64's release. All the voiceover work for Castlevania 64 has been removed, most likely due to the storage limitations of the 64's cartridge format, but it was used so sparingly in the original game, you don't really miss it except for Reinhardt and Carrie's opening prologues. This game also supports the Nintendo 64's expansion pack add-on, giving the game better textures but at the cost of a weak frame rate. I began capturing footage in high-res mode, but after lots of frame rate drops, I switched to the low-res mode for more fluid gameplay. Well guys, that's it for these tidbits. Let's drive a stake right into the heart of this review. The core to Legacy of Darkness's gameplay is platforming, with environmental hazards, basic enemies, and a boss fight there to prevent you from completing the level. This is a tried and true formula that still works till this day. The buttons are mapped out very well, and after learning them, it felt very natural to move around the environment and battle enemies, so the controls aren't all that bad, but there are issues. There are two buttons that aren't mapped very well. The game doesn't really tell you about them too unless you read the physical manual that came with the game. When playing Cornell, the left shoulder button activates his man-beast power, or should I say werewolf power. Problem is, to access this button, you have to move your hand to the left grip of the N64 controller, then back to the middle grip to continue playing the game. You have to do the same thing with the camera, which is controlled by the D-pad, which is also on the left grip of the controller. So in an intense situation, it's hard to switch hand positions on the controller to avoid getting hit or even dying in the game. I can't really fault the dev team too much on this, as this is what Nintendo designed for the system, so they're just doing the best they can with what Nintendo gave them to work with. One area I hate about the controls is the stick. It's a bit floaty and has a slight delay to it. So as you can see, with it being floaty and delayed, you're going to have problems at platforming parts of the game that require for you to have precise jumping and landing, or just walking on a thin piece of ground that is surrounded by death. And so, obviously, I had a lot of deaths in this game due to me slightly moving my controller stick, but my character making a sharp leap to the left or right and right into their death. The camera borders between workable to absolutely horrible, as it can't seem to stay still unless your character is walking forward. This makes the platforming parts frustrating, but at least having the D-pad to control the camera helps with this issue, but doesn't solve it. I can tell Konami was really emulating Mario 64 with the platforming elements, in games like Ocarina of Time, Silent Hill, or Resident Evil, with situations like being trapped in fights with monsters with no way to escape until you defeat said monster, exploring a mansion, dungeon, or tower for keys/items, and solving puzzles to get said items or keys. Another thing the game doesn't really tell you about is a vampire being able to latch onto you and suck your blood. Now, of course, it's Castlevania, they're vampires, that's what they're gonna do. So if you don't break free by rapidly rotating the controller stick, your status will change to vamp. This status keeps you from using certain items in your inventory, but luckily there is an item to purify you of this. Problem is, the game never says how to do this. So there were lots of instances where I tapped the A and B button repeatedly, like you would do, say, in Resident Evil if a zombie caught you, to try to break free, and it never really worked. I always ended up getting vamped. But again, like I said, luckily, you can get that item to purify you and cure you of your vampirism. Certain enemies can also poison you, but there's also an item you can use to cure that. If all this sounds very familiar to you, it's very much the survival horror elements of Resident Evil. I think especially for the style of Castlevania, these elements work very well. Legacy of Darkness wasn't just copying survivor horror, but dare I say pushing it forward, as there is a character in the game who is a business demon that sells you all the basic items you will need in the game if you can't find them in the wild. But I must say, when it comes to Renan, the demon salesman, read the fine print, because if you spend too much money, your soul is forfeit to him, and you will have to battle him to the death for it. A Castlevania classic is back in the game with sub-weapons that vary in type, like short range, long range, and the amount of damage they can deal out. You can pick up upgrades increasing their abilities. They do, however, have ammo in the form of red jewels that you collect throughout the game. Real quick, while I'm on the subject of weapons, your main weapon can be upgraded up to 3 times as well, each time increasing damage dealt out. But if you die or save and quit, when you get back on, your main weapon and sub-weapon for that matter default back to level 1. I get this happening when you die, but I feel it's a needless punishment for saving the game because, hey, you know, life happens. You gotta get off the game sometimes and go do something else. The level design has a broad range from mediocre, like the castle wall, or good, like the villa area, that reminds me a lot of Resident Evil 1's mansion, or even Resident Evil 2's RPD levels. It also goes to horrible, like the castle center, where you must carefully carry magic nitro through a nerve-wracking path. One fall or hit can cause you to explode, resulting in an instant death. I don't mind the nail-biting aspect of it, but the level just feels unfair and like it wasn't designed for such a situation. You have 4 characters to select from with their own unique abilities, stories, and stages. Cornell is a werewolf, or should I say man-beast according to the game here. He can claw enemies and fire energy from his hands. He has the ability to transform into a werewolf, and while this requires your jewels, the ammo for your sub-weapons, it does increase your damage you deal out, which comes in handy for the final boss fights. Henry, a knight, has a pistol which allows you to blast through all kinds of enemies. Dare I say, his main weapon is my favorite in the entire game, and probably because it's overpowered, but man is it fun to mow down those skeletons. Reinhardt, who is your prototypical Castlevania hero with a whip as his weapon. And finally, Carrie Fernandez, who has the use of magic. She shoots out a blast of magic to defeat her enemies. The gameplay actually had some high points where I had a lot of fun exploring and solving puzzles, and the enemies presented an obstacle, but not an overwhelming one for me. Also though, I have to mention the floaty controls, sometimes frantic camera, and the game telling you virtually nothing on how to deal with the environments and enemies. So with all this together, I'm going to give Legacy of Darkness's gameplay a solid 2 bits.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets!
Out of 4. The music is awesome. It really sets the tone and mood for its stages and the game overall. It has a gothic feel to it that at some parts put me in a dark and creepy mood. There's very little voice work in the game, but it is decent where it is placed and honestly not needed all that much. The sound effects sometimes sound a bit light and not as impactful, but for the most part they do the job, like Reinhardt's whip sound, or the very satisfying sound of Henry's gun blasting through monsters. So I'll end it with the sound effects and voice work being okay, and the music being awesome. Also, I didn't go into too much detail, but the music is very memorable. Like, I can recall almost all of the main themes of this game. They get stuck in your head. The composer did a great job with the soundtrack to this game. So sound gets 3 bits.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets!
Out of 4. The N64 had few and far between games that were not from Nintendo. In particular, I'm talking about it having less mature titles compared to, say, the PS1. Legacy of Darkness presents a gothic-styled game. The graphics are dark and the colors look muted. The environments and characters look good with great detail for the time. I found myself immersed in this world visually. It is possibly the high mark for this game as everything just looks awesome. Now, I did try the game out in high-res mode and low-res mode, and I can tell you high-res, the graphics look a bit better, but you're not really missing out on too much if you decide to go with low-res mode to have better gameplay and general performance. Now, the story to Legacy of Darkness is freaking epic. It starts in the mid-19th century, starting with the man-beast Cornell, whose village is attacked by Dracula's forces. They kidnap his adopted sister Ada to be sacrificed so they can resurrect the Count. During the game, Cornell runs into his old rival Ortega, another man-beast who sided with Dracula to unlock his werewolf powers, and to try to be more powerful than Cornell. He has a real Vegeta complex to him. Cornell also runs into the owner of the castle, J.A. Oldray, who is really a vampire and servant of Dracula. Cornell beats him and promises Mary, Oldray's wife, that he will save her son, Henry. Cornell then heads to the villa's hedge maze to save Henry from what I can only describe as the love child of the Frankenstein monster and Leatherface. Cornell then guides Henry to safety, but later in the game we'll see Henry again in his own story. Cornell runs into Dracula's servants throughout his quest, like Atrice the Witch, or, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, but is it Gilles de Rage, or Giest? I'm really bad at pronouncing this name. He's essentially the doppelganger servant or body double for Dracula later in the game. Near the end of the game, Cornell has to confront Ortega once again. They battle to see who is the best once and for all. Once Cornell comes out on top, Ortega tells him where his adopted sister is and jumps off a cliff. At the end of Cornell's story, he defeats Dracula and saves his sister, but at the cost of losing his man-beast power to Dracula, which was his goal all along. Ada was just the bait. With the man-beast power, Dracula is able to be resurrected more powerful than ever. A prophecy is made that a child shall be born with the soul of Dracula, and on his 8th birthday, Dracula's dark soul will awaken within the child. 2 heroes will emerge to battle him. We then move on to Henry's story, which is short and takes place during Reinhardt's and Carrie's battle with Dracula. Henry is a knight with the church. They send him to Dracula's castle to save children that were kidnapped by Dracula's minions looking for the child of prophecy. Henry's quest has few story elements to it. It's more open-ended rather than linear. The order in which you save the children is completely up to you. But at the end of it, Henry is successful at saving all the children in a short but fun story. We now move on to the 2 other characters who have similar stories with slight variances in them. Reinhardt is a Belmont descendant. He was chosen to receive the title of Vampire Hunter, and with it, the famous Belmont gimmick, a whip to kill vampires with. Reinhardt sets out to destroy Dracula. His story has him fighting through a cursed forest and castle. Then Reinhardt reaches the Villa Mansion. He encounters many people here, like Vincent, a fellow vampire hunter with a bit of an ego. A woman named Rosa, who is a vampire that has retained her humanity. And because of this, Rosa helps out Reinhardt throughout the game. And finally, Reinhardt runs into a boy named Malice, who was among some of the local children that were kidnapped by Dracula's minions. Like Cornell and Henry, Reinhardt must escort Malice through the hedge maze to safety. After exploring the castle and killing tons of monsters, Reinhardt runs into Rosa again, who is trying to take her undead life by stepping into the sun. Reinhardt saves her, which she comments on the irony of a vampire hunter saving a vampire and warning him not to travel further into the castle. Reinhardt encounters Death next. Death has brought Rosa and forces both of them to fight each other. Reinhardt comes out on top, but Death steals Rosa away. In this same part of the game, Reinhardt runs into Malice again. Reinhardt is puzzled as to why he didn't leave the castle, to which Malice asks strange questions and walks away laughing very evilly. Do I sense a red herring here? After reaching the top of the castle, Death ambushes Reinhardt, but Rosa sacrifices herself to save him, showing she hadn't fully been brought over to Dracula's side. Reinhardt then avenges her by sending Death back to hell. Reinhardt then defeats the Dracula imposter in the castle keep. The castle keep then begins to crumble away. As he escapes, Malice appears riding a demonic horse. Atop the tower, Malice reveals that he is indeed Dracula and transforms from a boy into a man. The two battle atop the tower, and after defeat, Dracula turns back into a boy, attempting to fool Reinhardt into thinking Dracula had just possessed the boy. Charles Vincent arrives on the scene and douses Malice in holy water, exposing him. Malice then transports Reinhardt to a desert realm and transforms into a giant demonic dragon. There is an epic battle that ensues between Reinhardt and demonic dragon Dracula. After defeating Dracula's final form, Reinhardt is transported back to reality where the castle sinks into the lake. Reinhardt then collapses to the ground, feeling grief for those that were lost. Suddenly, rose petals and then a rose drop down next to him and reveals Rosa, cured of her vampirism and freed from Dracula's curse. The two embrace, showing hope for the future. We then move on to Carrie Fernandez, who has a very similar story arc with a few differences. Carrie is a descendant of a powerful witch family that was executed for showing talents of witchcraft, including Carrie's parents. Carrie was adopted by a loving woman when Dracula's forces rose and killed her mom and fellow villagers. She sought out Castlevania and Dracula to end his evil reign. Carrie travels through the same beginning areas as Reinhardt, even running into familiar faces like Vincent, Rosa, and Malice. Instead of Death being an antagonist to Carrie, she has the evil witch Atrice to deal with. She at first tries to get Carrie to join her, but Carrie refuses. Carrie meets Atrice again later in the game. Atrice has captured a fellow Fernandez warrior who is related to Carrie. She has also turned her into a vampire. Like Reinhardt and Rosa, Carrie is forced to fight this fellow Fernandez, but unlike Rosa, the Fernandez does not survive the battle, and Carrie vows to put an end to Dracula. After traveling through the castle, Carrie confronts Atrice at the top of the castle for one final fight. After Carrie deals with Atrice, she sets her sight on Dracula. From here, Carrie's story follows Reinhardt's almost exactly, killing Dracula's doppelganger, then being confronted by Malice, the real Dracula, and battling him to the death. After Dracula's defeat, Carrie is transported back to her own dimension, where she watches the castle crumble into the lake. Her quest complete, Carrie visits her mother's grave to honor her memory. These two characters also have bad endings if you use too many sun or moon cards that speed up time to reach a certain time of day or night. You can tell you got the bad ending if at the end of the game a vampire Vincent confronts you before the battle with the imposter Dracula. Those endings are as follows. Reinhardt's bad ending sees him riding back to the village with Malice after defeating the false Dracula. Reinhardt speculates that Malice may be the next hero that has to fight Dracula. The scene ends with Malice's eyes ominously glowing red. Carrie's bad ending is the most twisted. After defeating the false Dracula, Carrie discovers Malice hiding behind a pillar in the castle keep. They leave the castle together, and on the way back to the village, Malice asks for Carrie's hand in marriage. Carrie refuses at first, but agrees to marry him when they're older. Malice mutters to himself, "Then we have a binding contract," showing the evil intentions of Malice. Or should I say, his malice intentions. Legacy of Darkness is a game that is packed with story. All the characters tie into and relate to each other, whether directly or indirectly, and the ending of the game ties up the story nicely. With an awesome gothic aesthetic and an epic story, presentation gets 3 bits.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets!
Out of 4.
So Castlevania Legacy of Darkness holds a special place in my heart. It's a game I got as a kid, and I played the living hell out of it and really enjoyed it. And that's why it was hard for me to watch more famous reviewers the past few years just give this game a proper thrashing. But it was refreshing to take a look at this game and take the nostalgia goggles off and realize that this game does have some major flaws, so some of that thrashing was well deserved. But also the game has some shining moments, so it's not all that bad. So my final verdict for Castlevania Legacy of Darkness for the Nintendo 64 is a suggested look for the casual, and dare I say, well, I will say, a recommended buy for the hardcore collector of the Nintendo 64, or even hardcore collector of Castlevania games in general. You can find it online for the hefty sum of $45, depending on condition. Well guys, that's it for this review. I want to thank you all for watching, and most importantly, I want to thank Gags Gaming for requesting this review. I had a lot of fun going back and playing this game, and I got a chance to reminisce about some old memories of mine, because this game, like I said, is a game I played a lot as a kid on my 64. So I had a lot of fun doing this. And for everyone else, if there is a game you wish for me to review, just in the comment section below, request it, and I promise I will get to it. I might not get to it right away, but I will put it on the docket to be reviewed. Well guys, that's it for me. I hope you guys join me next month for the next review. As always, stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up, and welcome to the August 2019 edition of the 2-Bit Review. It's a very special month. It's my birthday month. I'll be turning 32 this year. I'm old. And also, once we get to the end of the month, it'll be the anniversary of the channel. I've been doing this since 2015. I started working on videos in the month of August, so Streets of Rage, TNC Surf, and even Ghostbusters on the Sega Master System, those 3 original reviews, I was working on them in August of 2015, so this is a very special month for me and even for the channel. So today we're taking a look at a game that I was really anticipating when I was younger and I owned a GameCube, but by the time it came out I was kind of falling out of gaming and getting really into music. I still had my GameCube, but it sat in the corner and collected dust, so I never really got a chance to buy this game and play it. But today we are rectifying that, because today I am playing and reviewing Giest for the Nintendo GameCube.
Giest is a first-person action-adventure game for the Nintendo GameCube. Released in the summer of 2005 at the end of the GameCube's life cycle, it was published by Nintendo and co-developed by Nintendo and InSpace. InSpace created a prototype of Giest, then approached Nintendo to publish it. Once Nintendo agreed to help publish and develop the game, Giest joined Eternal Darkness as an M-rated game published by the Big N for the GameCube. InSpace's original idea was playing an invisible man as the protagonist. That concept, however, changed to being a poltergeist as the game's development progressed. Giest was originally supposed to be in the GameCube's 2003 lineup, but spent a few years in development hell. It was finally pushed out the door in late 2005 as the GameCube was winding down and the Wii was just on the horizon. A big reason for this long development cycle was InSpace and Nintendo's creative differences in the development of the game. InSpace thought that they were working on a first-person shooter, where Nintendo saw it as a first-person action-adventure game. And of course, Nintendo being the publisher got its way, and InSpace implemented more of those elements into the game. It was long rumored that Giest had a DS port in the works, as InSpace had DS dev kits around the time they were working on Giest. The only info that ever surfaced was Call of Duty Modern Warfare's DS port, which was developed by InSpace, had credits for Giest inside its ROM file. Well, with these tidbits done, let's haunt and possess our way into this review. Giest gameplay is a mixed bag in more ways than one. It's a first-person shooter action-adventure hybrid, which also has very similar possession and haunting mechanics of Haunting starring Poltergeist, which was created for the Sega Genesis back in the 90s. You play Raimi, a civilian scientist aiding a government anti-terror group. His soul was ripped out of his body, so he must possess and scare his way through levels. When he possesses an enemy, he can solve puzzles or fight other enemies. The controls work well, but they aren't as smooth as Bungie's Halo of that era, but you know what? They get the job done. When in spirit mode, Raimi cannot interact with the physical world except through possession. You can float for short periods to reach higher areas. Strangely, you can't pass through solid walls, even though you're a ghost. It's weird, but you can't. You have the ability to possess humans, animals, and objects. You can't be seen when in ghost mode, but dogs can sense you. To possess a host, you must first frighten them with an inanimate object. The only thing that can see you when you're in ghost mode is other ghosts. Everything moves in slow motion in ghost mode, so you have time to get out of a tricky situation if you're caught. If the animal or human host you've possessed is killed, you are unharmed and return to ghost mode. But you can't remain outside of a host indefinitely. Your spirit energy continually deteriorates until you find a new host. You can also find plants strewn throughout the levels that also restore this energy. Guards you possess carry one weapon and have unlimited ammo for that weapon. Some weapons have secondary functions like a grenade launcher or a scope. Other humans are professors, engineers, and several people with different supportive jobs. They cannot fight but allow you to progress through certain portions of the game and access new areas. Animals also can't be used for combat but can help reach some areas that humans or your ghost form cannot get to. The level design is very linear. You just go from point A to point B. The level design does make use of the gameplay mechanics, allowing you to use your abilities multiple times, but there's no sense of exploration or depth to the world. I love what was attempted with multiplayer, as they brought the single-player elements of gameplay into a first-person shooter-styled multiplayer mode, with free-for-all / team deathmatch, capture the host, and a very morbid capture the host and hunt mode. In deathmatch, each player is invulnerable until they possess a host. Once you've done this, the game plays exactly like a normal deathmatch. To prevent a player from staying in ghost mode indefinitely, you are timed to possess a host. Capture the host is a combination of deathmatch and capture the flag, where the host is the flag and must be brought back to the base. Capture the host and hunt mode is a host versus ghost mode. The hosts try to kill the ghosts, while the ghosts try to possess the hosts and drag them to a pit and commit suicide. This is a pretty dark concept for a multiplayer mode if you ask me personally. Unfortunately, there is only local split screen for this mode, but you can add bots to the game to have bigger matches if you are playing alone or with just say 2 to 3 players. The gameplay is very intriguing. They did something very different here when this era saw a lot of first-person shooters trying to copy the Halo model of design. Though I feel they did not balance it out evenly, the game felt like it couldn't decide whether it wanted to be a first-person shooter or a first-person action-adventure game. It has a sense of too many cooks in the kitchen, possibly due to Nintendo's meddling in the early development of the game. That said, it does have some shining moments and is an experience unlike any other from this era with a unique multiplayer mode to boot. I give gameplay a good, but not great, 2 bits. Out of 4. The sound of Giest comes up a little short. Sound effects, voice work, and music is fair, but I noticed some compression to the music and voices throughout the game. A lot of the music tracks aren't that great and are a bit repetitive. The main theme and boss fight tracks are standouts, but the rest of the music tracks are mediocre at best. So I give sound a very disappointing 1 bit. Out of 4. The game looks dated. Even for that era, I feel like I'm looking at an early GameCube, PS2, or Dreamcast game, which, barring the game's delays, it would have been one of the earlier releases for the GameCube. I'm not saying it looks bad per se, but games like Twilight Princess showed that games on the aging GameCube could still push the system to new graphical heights. That said, the characters, environments, and textures look well, but lack a wow factor to them. The story is as follows. It's the distant year of 2005! John Raimi is a civilian scientist and a member of a counterterrorism team sent to investigate the Volks Corporation. Thomas Bryson, Raimi's best friend, is working undercover at this corporation, and now it's time to get him out of there. After meeting up with Bryson, the alarm goes off and all hell breaks loose with guards and monsters attacking. At the end of this battle, one of Raimi's squad mates becomes possessed and kills the rest of the team, with the exception of Raimi. Raimi is captured and his soul is torn from his body by some sort of machine. Alexander Volks is revealed to be the antagonist of the game and puts Raimi into a machine to brainwash him to transform him into a new soldier for his Project Z. A spectral girl named Gigi, however, sabotages this plan and frees Raimi. Raimi then sets out to get his body back and save his best friend. During this quest, Raimi sabotages the machine used for ghost separation to prevent Bryson, his buddy, from suffering his same fate. In the chaos that follows, Rourke, the head of Volk's military department, and I would say sub-boss to the game, orders his men to fire a beam at the machine. Following his orders, the laser is fired, suddenly the machine breaks down and a humongous monster emerges from the rift. Because people cannot see ghosts, this goes unnoticed by the members of the Volks Corporation. Because of this, there are other beings that are free. Escaped creatures from the rift are roaming the compound now, killing everything that is not from their world. Further in Raimi's quest, he becomes a peeping Tom on a scientist lady who is in the shower. He possesses her to get access to Bryson. From there, Raimi manages to save Bryson and get a helicopter to pick him up. They part ways, but then the helicopter is taken down by Raimi's body, which is possessed. Raimi follows his possessed body and ends up at a deserted mansion. There he meets Gigi once again. She then reveals to Raimi what her connection to the Volks Corporation is. When she was alive, she lived with her aunt and brother in this mansion. Her brother is revealed to be Alexander Volks. Alexander was obsessed with the occult and supernatural when he was a young boy, often reading about it in books. One day he was reading a book in a tree. Gigi tried to get his attention. She climbed up the tree to get to him, but fell to her death. A grief-stricken Alexander came up with the plan to resurrect his sister from one of his occult books. He brought her to a special place and tried to bring her back to life using spells he found in his books. The ritual failed, however, and instead of bringing Gigi back to the world of the living, he turned her soul into a ghost. Alexander himself became slightly possessed by an ancient demon, which gave him a scar right above his eyes. Unaware of this, Alexander became a puppet to the demon. It is revealed that Volk's demon wants to seize control over the world through Alexander and release all his buddies from the afterlife and possess the leaders of the world so he can rule it. Eventually, Raimi gets his body back. He then moves on to stop the Volks Corporation from killing and possessing the world leaders. Raimi stops Project Z and comes face to face with the possessed Alexander. When Raimi kills Alexander's body, Gigi appears and gets pulled into Alexander's body by the ancient demon. Raimi follows her in ghost form. They end up in the ancient demon's world. There, Raimi battles and eventually kills the ancient demon and helps reunite Alexander and Gigi. Raimi escapes from the collapsing cave and is picked up by a helicopter. In the helicopter, it's revealed that Bryson survived that other helicopter crash, and also on the helicopter is the scientist lady that he peeped on like a pervert, and the dog he possessed earlier in the game. The helicopter then flies off into the horizon as you got your buddy, I guess your new pet dog, and I guess new girlfriend, since you peeped on her while she was taking a shower, scared the shit out of her, and then possessed her for a good portion of the game. Yeah, that's how romance works out in the modern era. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, after that rant, and you get a nice, happy ending to the story. The story is standard, and I was not very interested in Raimi or any of the other characters. The only part that even mildly interested me was the relationship between Gigi and Alexander. So with aging textures and a bland story, I give presentation 1 bit out of 4. Geist is an interesting game. It tries to cram in a bunch of different genres into the first-person shooter genre. It really takes the series in a different direction than, say, Halo or even Medal of Honor were doing at the time. And those were the two titles that were dominating first-person shooters in that era. And Geist was on the side, kind of doing its own thing, but it was an interesting thing. Even though they had the first-person shooter element, the action-adventure element, and the haunting poltergeist element that reminded me of that old Sega Genesis game, Haunting, starring Poltergeist. They took that, kind of possess an item, scare a person, possess that person. They took that whole concept and they put it in there, and it's very interesting. It's a very bold decision, I think, and while I like what they're trying to do, the end result isn't always great. I mean, some parts of the game it feels very schizophrenic, or there's just too many cooks in the kitchen, where I feel like they should have taken one level and hammered down on one style of gameplay, and the next level be hammered down on the other style of gameplay, or even mix it up more evenly, where sometimes in the game it just feels like it's all over the place. So, my final verdict for Geist on the Nintendo GameCube is a surprisingly suggested buy for the casual and hardcore collector of the Nintendo GameCube.
The reason I say that is this game's actually dirt cheap right now online. You can get it for around $9 to $10 depending on its condition. If it was a little bit more expensive, I probably wouldn't suggest getting it, but since it's around that $10 price point, I think it's worth getting and worth playing in your collection. It's not the greatest game, but it's not the worst game. Well guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to tune in next month. It is the anniversary review, and in tradition of the channel, I will be taking a look at a beat-em-up game. Been doing it for like the last 4 years. I'm not going to change up that formula, so it will be a beat-em-up game. You're just going to have to wait till next month to find out which game it is. As always guys, be sure to stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and welcome to the 4th anniversary of the 2-Bit review. Now, as you guys have seen in the past, for an anniversary review, I usually look at a Streets of Rage game, and I've kind of ran out of Streets of Rage games. Now, Streets of Rage 4 is coming out as of the recording of this video, but it hasn't come out yet. But rest assured, when it does, I will take a look at it, and I will review it. Now, it was always my intention to look at a beat-em-up game for the anniversary review. It was never intended for it to always be Streets of Rage. It just so happened that every anniversary I wanted to look at a Streets of Rage game. And now that I've finished off that franchise, now I could look at fan remakes or imports from Japan or whatnot, but I'm in the mood to move on. It's time to move on and look at other franchises. And the franchise in particular I'm going to look at today is one that asks a very important question. And that question is, the president has been kidnapped by ninjas. Are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president? Now this game has spawned a bunch of memes. This game is also a little personal for me as its Stage 2 theme is the main theme to the 2-Bit channel and 2-Bit review. I've been using it for the past 4 years now. Maybe you guys are tired of listening to it, but you know what? Too bad. HBK had his sexy boy theme and he stuck with it, and I'm sticking with this theme. And without further ado, let's go ahead and review Baddudes for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Baddudes is a side-scrolling beat-em-up arcade game developed and published by Data East. Originally released in the arcades, it eventually made its way to the home consoles and PCs in the late 80s and early 90s. The console ports had some changes to the arcade, however. President Ronald Reagan in the NES version was removed because of Nintendo of America's censorship rules. The president in NES Baddudes does bear a resemblance to George H.W. Bush, whose administration was in power at the time of the NES port's release. The intro to Baddudes, featuring a pre-Resident Evil Albert Wesker telling the player the president has been kidnapped by ninjas and if you're a bad enough dude to rescue him, catapulted the game into popular meme culture. Karnov, the main character of another Data East game, made a cameo in the first stage as its boss. The NES instruction manual states the reason Karnov is working with the ninjas is a mystery. Baddudes has also been referenced in general pop culture with the movie Parenthood starring Steve Martin. Well guys, that's it for the tidbits on this game. Let's see if we're bad enough dudes and dudettes for this review. Baddudes is your basic side-scrolling single/co-op beat-em-up where you must beat up every ninja on the stage by any means necessary. How you accomplish this is with your wits, your mitts, your kicks, and your weapons that are found in the stage. You can also pick up cans of soda to refill health. You also have a special spin kick move that comes in handy when too many enemies are on the screen. Something I didn't discover while recording is a charge attack you can perform to get greater damage on enemies, particularly bosses. There are 2 Baddudes that you can play. Blade, a guy in a tank top and white sweatpants, or Striker, another guy in a tank top, but this time with green sweatpants. You will run into all kinds of ninjas in this game. The basic blue ninja run up and attack you, while the gray ninjas throw shurikens at you. Red ninjas attack with a sai, and teal ninjas attack with a sword. Other enemies are lady ninjas, dogs, and fire people. At the end of each stage you will face a boss. The first is the previously mentioned Karnov, who breathes fire at you. Second stage has a short Vega wannabe ninja who attacks head-on while sometimes trying to flip behind you. Third is a green ninja who has Dragon Ball's Tien Shinhan's multi-form attack. Fourth is Road Warrior Hawk, who does a spin double kick. Fifth is a bad Belmont cosplay with a whip. Sixth is a monk with a bow staff. The seventh and final boss is the head ninja, I guess. I'll call him Dragon Ninja. He sits on his helicopter throwing fire at you from above and attacking you with a sword when you jump onto the helicopter. Bosses are basic and only have a few moves, no standouts like my beloved Streets of Rage series. The level design is lackluster. You visit a few different locations, but they all essentially feel the same and loop together like the truck and train stages. The controls have slightly stiff handling to them, but nothing too bad. All in all, Baddudes gameplay is a subpar 1 bit out of 4. Now, I know a lot of people are going to think I'm going to give sound a positive ranking since Stage 2 theme is also the theme I chose for the show, but you would be wrong. Yes, Stage 2's song is awesome and very memorable, which is kind of why I picked it. But this game has essentially 3 songs: Stage 1 theme, Stage 2 theme, and a boss theme. Stage 1 and 2 alternate between levels. This lack of variety wore thin on me. The sound effects are downright garbage. When you defeat a boss, you are treated to your character striking a pose and declaring, "I'm bad." I'm bad. Possibly a reference to Michael Jackson's I'm Bad song. The voiceover work, or lack thereof, is heavily compressed and it sounded like the actor was very intoxicated and a bit of a mumbler to boot. So all this together gives sound a half bit out of 4. Graphical presentation is poor. The sprites kept flickering throughout the game. The bosses, the basic enemies, even my character couldn't hold his sprite together. Now, flicker is normal for games of this era, but Baddudes takes it to a whole other level. I think this is due to too many characters being on the screen at one time. The world doesn't have a whole lot of variety either. The only thing separating Blade and Striker from being the same character is the color of their sweatpants. The enemy ninjas look basically identical save for their colors. The stages look alright but heavily use black, brown, and green in all the levels. The world lacks variety in color. Now this could be all due to the NES's limitations, but I have played games on the system that still delivered more visual variety than Baddudes. So, you know what? It's not the system, but the developer. The plot is very basic and cuts to the chase. The president has been kidnapped by ninjas. And are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president? And after beating up all the ninjas, your bad enough dude does indeed rescue the president. He thanks you by offering to have a burger with you at the White House. How quaint. I love this story for its simplicity and ridiculousness, but the lack of variety elsewhere in presentation holds this game back. 1 bit out of 4.
Baddudes for the NES is an okay title. It just feels mediocre at best, and I feel like it almost feels like it's someone who's in the middle of their scheduled week at work. You know, they've already worked quite a few days and put a few hours in, but they still got a long way to go, and it's just kind of like, you know what, I'm gonna coast today. And that's what Baddudes feels like. It feels like the development team just kind of said, hey, we're gonna coast on the development of this game. I can already hear some people saying, hey, you can't compare Baddudes to, say, Streets of Rage, to Final Fight. That was a whole different generation of video game consoles. It was better hardware, and you had more buttons to map out on the controls. And I would say, yeah, but look at the NES. The NES had some awesome beat-em-ups. You had Double Dragon, you had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, and even 3. So you had, on that system, a blueprint on how to make a solid beat-em-up game. So I'm not really comparing it to the 16-bit era of beat-em-ups. I'm comparing it to the 8-bit generation of beat-em-ups, and in that aspect, Baddudes falls very short. My final verdict for Baddudes on the NES is a recommended look, but definitely not buy for the casual or hardcore collector of the NES. It's a one-and-done game. Honestly, emulate it to see if you enjoy it before you buy it, if you're going to buy it. And I know hardcore collectors, you need to complete your NES collection. And to you guys, you can find it online for about $7 or $8. And I can already hear probably a hardcore fan base for this game say, oh, this game is great, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, I played it, there were some enjoyable moments, but ultimately, it's not a good game, it's not a bad game, it's a mediocre game, and yeah, that's my opinion, it's my review. If you don't like it, do your own review. That's where I stand on that. And with that said, that concludes my 4th anniversary review. 4 freaking years! That's like a presidential term. And I'm running for my 2nd presidential term for the MFers. I am the digital chronicler of all entertainment, 2-Bit Jesus. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel all these years. And hey, here's to another 4 years, and I'll see you next year when I review a franchise that I haven't taken. I've mentioned this franchise. I've mentioned it, but I'm going to start reviewing it next year for the next Beat 'em Up anniversary review. Thanks for watching. See you guys next month for my spooky Halloween review. As always, stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up, and welcome to the 2019 Halloween edition of the 2-Bit Review. And today we're taking a look at a game that I never got to take a look at when I was a kid. So I get to play it as an adult and kind of fix the mistake that was my childhood. Thanks, Mom, for not buying me this game. And yeah, I didn't own a Super Nintendo, you know, but my friends did. You could have bought them that game, given them that game so I could go to their house and play it. So, shame on you, Mom. So, guys, I know you're wondering, what game are we taking a look at today? Well, without further ado, we are taking a look at Zombies Ate My Neighbors for the Super Nintendo. Let's jump right in.
Zombies Ate My Neighbors is a top-down run-and-gun shooter developed by LucasArts and published by Konami for the Super Nintendo and Sega Mega Drive/Genesis. It was released in 1993. It is known in Europe and Australia simply as Zombies due to censorship. According to an interview, and by the way, pardon me if I mispronounced this name, Toshiyasu Morita, Sega of America's tech director, the game was developed for the Super Nintendo, then it was ported to the Sega Genesis at the halfway point of development. In that same interview, he revealed the engine for Zombie Ate My Neighbors was later used for Ghoul Patrol, Zombie Ate My Neighbors sequel, as well as Metal Warriors and Big Sky Trooper. The Super Nintendo version has a flamethrower, which is not present in the Sega version. Like I said earlier, Zombie Ate My Neighbors had some censorship. Nintendo, in typical Nintendo fashion, did not want violence on their platform. Nintendo demanded all blood and gore be changed to purple ooze. It's good to keep in mind, though, that Nintendo was very aggressive in this era on self-censorship of their platforms. Being a LucasArts game, you have some references to the LucasArts game universe, namely Maniac Mansion / Day of the Tentacles, Tentacle Monster, being included in this game. While Zombies Ate My Neighbors was not a commercial success, it did get a sequel, Ghoul Patrol, but this game was not intended to be a sequel originally, but got reworked into it due to Zombie Ate My Neighbors having more brand recognition that the developers hoped would increase sales for the title. Apparently some crazy people were trying to create a film based on this game. A report from 2011 showed that the filmmakers were trying to secure rights from LucasArts. This was, of course, all before Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm and the closing of LucasArts. So I would put odds against this movie ever getting greenlit. Well, that's it for the tidbits, guys. Let's try to save the neighborhood from zombies in this review. The basic gameplay is an arcade top-down run-and-gun shooter style. The controls handle very tight in this game. I feel completely in control of my actions, and if I die or a neighbor gets eaten, it's because I made a mistake. The controls to the game are balanced and fair. You have the choice of 2 characters, Zeke, a spiked-haired punk boy, and Julie, a red-capped wearing teen. You must explore your neighborhood, shopping mall, pyramid, and haunted castle. You know, the basic things a suburban town has. You explore these areas trying to save your neighbors. Standing in your way are all the classic horror movie monsters like vampires, werewolves, swamp monsters, giant demonic babies, spiders, aliens, mummies, Texas chainsaw wielding guys, evil clones, giant dune worms, and last but not least, zombies. The enemies are fairly dumb and will not present a great challenge directly to you, aside from some enemies having more health, requiring more ammo, or an enemy that requires a specific weapon to kill them. The main challenges in the game are resource management with your weapons and time management with saving your neighbors. as it only takes one touch from a monster to kill your neighbors. And you must be quick on your feet if you hope to save them all in a given level, because if you don't, they will not continue with you into the next level, making it more challenging in preceding levels with less people to save. If you lose all your neighbors, it's game over. Once all neighbors are saved in a given level, a magic door opens up for you to step in that takes you to the end stage score screen, then onto the next level. The game has lots of items and weapons to use. You have keys to access locked areas containing neighbors or weapons, health packs and potions that can change you into a stampeding monster, and of course an arsenal of weapons, your trusty submachine water gun, bazookas, weed whackers, grenade-esque soda cans, silverware, crucifixes, flamethrowers for the Super Nintendo version, fire extinguishers, and alien guns, and so much more. As stated earlier, these weapons can be super effective against certain types of monsters, like the vampire is very weak to the cross. The game also implements a radar to help you find neighbors. The game also has a password system which is inadequate for reasons I will discuss in a moment. It is only available for a few levels. You must slog through a few stages before getting to the next password section. You also start at a password point with only your base weapon, which really hurts you later on in the game as enemies are tougher to kill. It would have been nice if at a password start point, the game provided the players with a basic assortment of weapons that are needed to fight the enemies of that stage. The level design is great here. You explore through a top-down view and it has a gauntlet dungeon crawl feel to it. The problem lies in that there are 48 freaking stages to explore. For a game that has an arcade style to it, this makes the game feel like a marathon. This is where the password system is very inadequate. With that many levels, a save system would have been more preferable. Co-op works well, but stick together as you are both sharing the same screen and cannot venture off on your own. It is very easy to get stuck in an area if you are not paying attention, and requires teamwork and, most importantly in this game, time to try and get your duo back together. The gameplay is awesome, but the marathon 48 levels really exhausted me. This game ideally is a lot of fun for about 1 or 2 hours, but once you start getting into the third hour, the fun factor starts wearing thin and it feels like a chore to slog through the levels of the game. So in summation, with tight controls, a fun arcade style that unfortunately goes on a little too long, gives Zombies Ate My Neighbors gameplay 2 bits out of 4. You all know, LucasArts is the king of sound in retro gaming. Zombies Ate My Neighbors has an awesome soundtrack that really fits the style of the genre. The sound effects work great too. Every weapon and nearly every action has a sound to it, which is awesome as some games from that era wouldn't put that much sound detail into a level. While the music is awesome, it does have a noticeable compression to the sound quality, but it doesn't really take away from the overall experience. Sound gets a near perfect 3 bits out of 4. The game looks awesome. The characters and world are very detailed. The 2 main characters are very distinct from each other, as well as the neighbors who range from tourists to chefs, teachers, babies, soldiers, pets, cheerleaders, and kids. The monsters are distinct too. The graphical presentation is top-notch. The story, however, is bare bones and clearly took a backseat to gameplay in the development of Zombies Ate My Neighbors. The plot to the game is Zeke and Julie set out to rescue their neighbors from monsters. Traveling throughout their town, they fight against giant babies, giant ants, giant spiders. At the end, you face Dr. Tongue, who I guess is the cause of the monster outbreak. They never clearly state this. But you face his giant head and defeat him to save the neighborhood. At the end, you get to walk through the development studio talking to the creators of the game. This, I feel, is an amazing way to do credits and should be used more often, in my humble opinion. While the story falls very short, the art and presentation score very high marks. I give presentation 2.5 bits out of 4. Zombies Ate My Neighbors is a good game. I love the art direction. I love the variety of weapons, variety of enemies, the level design, the resource management. All of it is just awesome. This game, there was a lot of love put into it, and I can see that. But
the marathon of the levels, like the amount of levels you have to go through, the fact that it has an arcade style to it, it's just a little too long. The fact that they have a password system and not a save system for a game this big, and when you use that password, especially in later levels, you start out with just your basic weapon and they don't give you anything else. You have to scrounge and find those other weapons. It has a very steep difficulty curve to it. So my final verdict for Zombies Ate My Neighbors on the Super Nintendo is going to have to be a recommended look but not buy for the casual or hardcore collector of the Super Nintendo. And honestly, it comes right down to the length of the game, the fact that it implements a password system, the steep difficulty curve, all of that I think really brings the game down. And I can't fully say, hey, go out and buy this game, especially because this game is about $33 online, depending on its condition, and that's a lot of money to plop down, I think, for a retro game. And I would hate for someone to spend $30 on a game and absolutely hate it because of my recommendation. So, definitely, maybe emulate it first, see if you enjoy it. If you really enjoy it, by all means, go out, buy that game, enjoy that game on your Super Nintendo. So, with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. I enjoyed doing it for you. I hope you guys join me next November, because we're going to be taking a look at a game that's somewhat related to the game I reviewed last November. With all that said, I hope you guys have a happy Halloween, and as always, stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and welcome to the November 2019 edition of the 2-Bit Review, or should I actually say the Thanksgiving 2019 edition of the 2-Bit Review. Now, as you guys remember, last year I took a look at Tecmo Bowl for the NES, and I thought I would keep in that same vein and look at another arcade-style video game. Now, it's not going to be just any game, it's going to be a game that is arguably just as successful and popular as Tecmo Bowl, and that game is Nflblitz for the N64. So mash those potatoes, kill that turkey, and enjoy this review.
Nflblitz is an arcade-style sports game developed and published by Midway Games. It was released in arcades to great acclaim in 1997, so the inevitable console ports for the N64 and PS1 came in 1998. Due to the game's violence, the NFL was going to pull its licenses during the game's development, but Midway decided to compromise, so they toned down the violence in order to keep the NFL teams in the game. This game didn't have a whole lot in the way of tidbits, so I guess we're just gonna fumble our way through this review. Let's do this. Nflblitz follows the basic rules of American football, but has the fast arcade play of Tecmo Bowl with a more aggressive style. Possibly due to system limitations or just gameplay flow, you control 7 players on the field as opposed to the standard 11 players. But this limit doesn't hinder the gameplay, and a player on the team will have dual roles in the plays you choose. What really separates Nflblitz from its arcade predecessors is the looser rules like passing interference and hitting a player after a tackle or play has finished. And when I say hit, I just don't mean tackle again, I'm talking about leg drops, German suplexes, and so much more wrestling moves. I must say, it's pretty satisfying to take that frustration out with a leg drop on the opposing team if a play goes wrong for you. One weird thing is after a touchdown, your extra point is automatic. Maybe they couldn't get field goal animations put into the game in time, or just maybe it didn't fit with the play style. Everything about the gameplay is fast-paced. Quarters are by default shortened to 2 minutes apiece, and the players move up and down the field very fast. The controls work very well. Every time a play went wrong was because I didn't react fast enough or execute the play right. The game is fair in this aspect. That said, the fast pace can be brutal for beginners. Nflblitz offers you all the basic football game modes, a regular exhibition mode, season mode, etc. The modes paint by the numbers and don't do anything too fantastic in my opinion. Nflblitz also has the classic Midway cheats that you enter in the versus mode. Also, you can enter names in the record book where you can unlock characters like Shinnok. Gameplay is a ton of fun, but can be a little tough for casual players at first. I give it 3 bits out of 4.
First and 30.
The music is decent in Blitz. It has a generic late 90s arcade feel to them. The sound effects are great. I love the impactful and bone-crushing sounds that occur in the game. The voiceover work is also awesome. I love the announcer and the funny things you hear from the players. There is a downside to all this praise when it pertains to the N64 version. The sound is very compressed. It's like they recorded it in a dive bar with a shitty mic setup. So that brings sound score down quite a bit. I give it 1.5 bits out of 4. Presentation is a mixed bag. Blitz has all the NFL teams, and the players look great. The stadium, however, looks very basic in design and empty. There is no crowd animation, no referees, no coaches or players on the sidelines. Luckily, the gameplay has a good hook to it, and overall, you forget about all these missing parts to the presentation. But since this is the section of the review where all I focus on is the presentation, it is glaring, and it really takes you out of the immersion if you're like me when you play games and sometimes you like to just sit there and take in the roses. So, in summation, presentation gets 1 bit out of 4. Nflblitz is a good game. I had a lot of fun playing it, but I think its real potential lies in it being a party game or even a game that you would use for tournaments. With each quarter only being roughly around 2 minutes long, that means each game would be about 10 to 20 minutes long, so you could get a few friends together and see who's the best and talk some smack. That being said, I'm a little biased here. I'm not a huge fan of sports games, so it was really hard for me to get into the other modes, and I didn't see a whole lot of value in them. Now, a sports fan would probably love that aspect of it. So I'm just going to say that up front, that I'm not the biggest fan of sports games, but the exhibition mode, I had a lot of fun playing that, and I could see the potential with multiplayer and having friends over. And so my final verdict for Nflblitz on the N64 is a recommended look for the casual and hardcore collector for the N64. The reason I only recommend it is because they released better versions of this game, and I honestly would get those because you're going to get better features and overall gameplay experiences. But if your heart is set on getting the original Nflblitz for the N64, you can find it for around $11 or $12 depending on its condition online. Well guys, that's it for this review. I hope you guys have a happy and safe Thanksgiving, and as always, stay safe and play on. Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and welcome to the December 2019 edition of the 2-Bit Review. Now, in December reviews past, I've taken a look at a game that I got during Christmas that I had fond memories of. I've taken a look at a game that reminded me of Christmas. I've taken a look at a game that took place during Christmas, but never have I ever reviewed a game that was about Christmas. And that changes this year with this review. I hope you guys aren't creeped out by those old school stop animation movies, because this game is based on one of those. The game we're taking a look at today is Santa Claus is Coming to Town for the Nintendo Wii. Let's jump right in. Santa Claus is Coming to Town is a tie-in video game based on the Rankin Bass Productions classic stop-motion film of the same name. It was released holiday season of 2011 for the Nintendo Wii. Now, I searched the entire internets for more info and couldn't find anything that would give greater insight into the development of this title. I have a bad feeling that this may just be shovelware with an iconic film slapped onto it to generate sales. So with that said, let's have a merry time reviewing this game. The game, and I use that term very loosely, is a walking simulator. You could also make the claim that there is platforming in the game, but that aspect of the gameplay was used so little that I can't be convinced. I still consider this a walking simulator. Your goal is to walk to the end of the level collecting snowflakes. Later levels also have letters to Santa and have you giving children toys. If you run out of toys, you enter a minigame where you must waggle the Wiimote around to build more toys. Another minigame involves waggling the Wiimote around to place presents at a fireplace. You don't have any obstacles blocking your way from completing the levels outside a guard trying to arrest you that costs you snowflakes or a patch of ice that can trip you. There is a collectible in the game, stockings that unlock stills from the movie, which is stupid. It would have been cool if you would have unlocked a behind the scenes making of the movie, or maybe clips even from the movie, but no, we get pictures, and very low quality pictures at that. The game offers co-op. The second player takes control of Santa's penguin pal Topper, so if you want someone to join you in your misery, you have that option. The controls handle horribly. They are very stiff and the Wiimote's accuracy is god-awful. The game tells you a specific motion to do with the Wiimote, but it doesn't really work. I found flailing the Wiimote around gives better results. It is downright torture playing this game, especially considering that you have to slog through 25 freaking levels of this shit. You know what? I also found out you don't need to give out toys or collect a whole lot of snowflakes/letters to complete the level. You just gotta get to the end, which midway through playing this shit game, that's what I decided to do. I mean, outside of the first time doing it, there's no fun walking around collecting snowflakes or the letters, getting toys to the children, or waggling the Wiimote at the screen in the minigames. It came down to me wanting just to finish this game so I could review it and be done with it. You have essentially two levels, the city and the wilderness. The only difference in between the 25 levels is the time of day. This is lazy level design, and frankly, they had to have had the budget for more than 2 levels. Then again, maybe the bulk of this game's budget went into acquiring the license from the movie. I didn't start out hating this game, but after 2 to 4 hours of walking around and control waggling at the TV, I grew to despise it truly. Santa Claus is Coming to Town's gameplay gets 0 bits out of 4. But hey, it does get 1 lump of coal. Sound quality is good, though sometimes it felt like the music or voice work wasn't mixed right and it overpowered everything else. The voice work is very awkward. I really don't know if it's because of placement from the developers or the voice actors themselves, or hell, maybe it's a mixture of both. The voice actors do a decent job of sounding like the characters from a movie that was made like a half-century ago. If you like Christmas music, you will like this game. All the soundtracks have a Christmas theme to them. The one drawback is there is one song that seems to be used prominently throughout the game. When a different track does play, you won't notice it, as more than likely you've drowned out the music by that point. The sound isn't bad in this game, but it also doesn't try to stand out with its awkward voice delivery or repetitive soundtrack. I give it 1 bit out of 4.
Oh, is that all?
The graphics are serviceable. The world and characters look exactly like their movie counterparts. They even have the soulless expressions as the movie's stop-motion dolls. The fact that there's only 2 levels gives you little variety. You will see a town and a forest area, and that's it. So while the first 3 levels are visually appealing, it gets very repetitive after that. I mean, you feel like you're in a loop, going from the town to the mountain/forest area, back to the town, and then back to the mountain/forest area. You're just on loop. The plot follows the movie for the most part. You play Kris Kringle. You are abandoned in the wilderness and adopted by toy-making elves who used to make toys for the king until the lawmaker, Herr Burgermeister, tripped on a toy and outlawed them. Sounds like he might be the ancestor of another thin-skinned lawmaker we may know. When Santa grows up, he decides to give toys to kids, so for the rest of the game, you hit all the big plot points of the movie, befriending the warlock, seducing Mrs. Claus, and escaping Herr Burgermeister and his guards by flying reindeers out of the city. I respect that the game stayed loyal to the story and followed it almost to the letter, even including a few songs from the movie, but the fact that there are only 2 locations to visit in the game and you have to go between these areas through a whopping 25 levels makes just watching the movie preferable to playing this game. Presentation gets 1 bit out of 4.
City, past where even most animals live, up to the North Pole.
Wow, that was kind of a game. More like walking simulator. White walking simulator? White walkers. White walking. Get it? Yeah. Staying relevant by being irrelevant, right? Anyway, seriously, a walking simulator. Not really a game. I don't have words. I'm stumbling over myself. Holy crap, this thing sucked. I mean, you walk from one side of the screen to the next, and you're collecting snowflakes, letters to Santa, you're throwing toys at kids, and you're creating toys by waggling the remote at the screen. This really isn't a game, and honestly, I wouldn't be as negative if it was only like 5 to 10 levels long. You know, it would have been like, okay, this is kind of bullshit, but you know, it's a short game. No, this is like 25 levels of this bullshit. My final verdict for Santa Claus is Coming to Town on the Nintendo Wii is a must, an absolute must, plunge into the darkest, deepest depths of the earth so we never have to see it again for the casual and hardcore collector of the Nintendo Wii. Now, anyone who wants to do this service for humanity, you can find this game online for around $3 to $6 depending on its condition, but if you do it, you will be a hero, and I will salute you, sir or madam, for doing this. Well guys, that's it for this review. Thank you so much for supporting the channel for this entire year, you know, for the entire life of the channel. It's another year in the books for the channel. You know, I started this year out wanting to do a review each month for the entire year, and I accomplished it. I was locked in a dungeon for a while. I kind of didn't want to get back into reviewing games, but you know what? I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I took my therapist up on their suggestion, and thank you all for your love and support of this channel. So what does 2020 hold for 2-Bit Jesus and the 2-Bit Review? Well, honestly, for the first time in a long time, I frankly don't know. I don't really have a course set, but don't worry. I have a stack of games right over there, and I want to play through them and possibly review them for you guys. So I'm still going to do reviews. I'm still going to be here, so I'm not going anywhere. It's just going to be an adventure on how we get there, I guess. Well guys, I hope you have a happy and wonderful holiday season and a wonderful new year, and if for some sad reason I don't see you guys next year, just want you guys to know I appreciate each and every one of you, from the people who subscribed to me, supported me, commented on my videos, suggested games I review, even people who've been critical of me, each and every one of you, all of you guys who've collaborated with me in one way or another, all you great guys on YouTube, SatXJ, Video Game Book Club, you know, Daniel and Clay, they're on a retro tip, all of you guys, thank you so much, and all of you guys who've watched my videos, thank you so much, and everyone who's directly had a hand in this channel, thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I'll just leave with this sweet but bitter phrasing that I really like, and that is that goodbye may seem forever, farewell is like the end, but in my heart's a memory, and there each and every one of you will always be. That's it for me, guys. 2-Bit Jesus saying stay safe and play on.